What is up, guys? Welcome back to Bitcoin Audible. I am Guy Swan, the guy who has read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know. This show is brought to you by the HRF, the Human Rights Foundation, and their amazing Financial Freedom Report. They are such an incredible resource, including their newsletter. Hey, buddy, you like the HRF and the Financial Freedom Report? Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. And one of my major resources for keeping up to date was what's going on with financial repression around the world, with CBDCs, and with specifically the tools to get around it. Because there's a lot of tools, especially being built in Africa and in like China and stuff, that are trying to get around some of these financial repression issues, and they're not in kind of like the Western bubble. So they become like a really great resource for a lot of those other services and tools that are being built. Definitely check them out. The link and details will be in the show notes. And of course, this is also brought to you by PubKey and Synonym, who are the makers of PubKey and the BitKit wallet, which BitKit is a on-chain and Lightning wallet that I'm a huge fan of. If you're in the US, use a VPN. And PubKey is, if you had to redesign the internet today, like just the core pieces, and you wanted to remove that major barrier where users are defined by the platform rather than the users being something that they control, their ID, and the platform just being a host and no longer a point of control, PubKey is that. It is a rethinking of how the web works with as simple a set of tools that we already have and we already know work, put together in a robust way. And it's not something that I can break down in just a couple of seconds. So I will give you the link as well as my ID so that you can follow me up on the PubKey app. I highly encourage you to check it out. Tag me or send me a post so that I know you're up there checking it out. All right. We have got Roundtable number 10 today. And we are a month behind, so we have a lot to catch up on. We didn't get to the roundtable last month. We have a roundtable with Bitcoin mechanic, my brother Jeff, and my good friend and OG Steve. Simple Steve. Hey, buddy. It's Simple Steve. Let's go ahead and get into the roundtable, actually, because I don't want to lead it off too much. We have a freaking marathon today, and it's a good one. I think you're going to enjoy it. No, it's not good, is it? All right, let's go ahead and jump in. Mechanic, Steve, Jeff, and myself, a roundtable number 10. What's up? What's up? All right, we are roundtable. This is technically 10, and it's month 11, I think, because we skipped a month. That was a busy month. I think we tried to reschedule it like 15 times and then gave up, just threw in the towel. So we actually have a shit ton of stuff to cover. So actually the only thing I didn't put in this list for you guys, which is actually the one I feel like we should start off on. No. We're not going to do that. We're going to just catch up on everybody's month because we're 2 months behind here. So we're going to go around the clock here. Go up above me. I don't know where everybody is on your screen, but we're going to start with Jeff. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I am I just officially scheduled my wedding.
Did you?
Nice.
Yeah,
Congrats.
So the only reason we haven't gotten married so far is because a lawyer told us that if she wanted to get an H-1B visa, that actually being married would kind of be a red flag. So if we're engaged and she's in the fiance visa process, then that's not as big of a deal if she gets a job. We've just kind of she's applied to a couple more places, but the H-1B visa thing is just kind of like not happening, it looks like. So we really don't want to spend another winter in Canada, and we
You don't. Mechanic. No, you don't.
we are going to get married in Utah online. in a Zoom meeting. So, you guys can attend if you want.
Am I invited?
And yeah. And
What's the
and
dress code?
this I whatever you want.
We can spend the first 30 minutes talking about microphone problems.
As long as your lack of pants is below the camera line, it's fine. And so
Pants optional dress code.
we're going to be married in Utah, and then I am flying to Antigua to look at houses and stuff down there, because we're looking at, like, we're probably going to move to Antigua hopefully before the year's over. So we'll see. The whole citizenship by investment program there, it takes a little while too. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting anyway.
Well, sweet. Congrats on the scheduled Zoom wedding. That's really exciting. Am I invited? I'm invited.
Yeah,
right?
I'm going up there like next week. When is, like, the 3rd or something, going to Canada. So I'm going to be there with her in person, and then we're going to try and get her parents.
You're going to be in person at your wedding?
Yeah. You don't have to be, apparently.
Are you shitting? No shit.
I figured that, like a remote kiss just really wouldn't be the way that I want to remember that day. So
you may kiss the camera.
Yeah, that's so we're gonna do that part in person, and hopefully her parents will be able to attend. We try to do it early enough in the day that I mean, they won't understand any of it, but they can watch and enjoy, and then she can explain what just happened. And yeah.
So now I'm kind of curious, like, if you don't have to attend weddings in person, is there already like scams here where people are like finding out they're married, like, or something?
Yeah, like AI
scan.
Someone just opened a joint bank account with me and spent all my like,
well, the KYC process involved in this is pretty involved, or pretty serious. I don't mean, like, you could certainly, that was my thought too, is like, you could certainly fake this. But and really, Utah is the only place that does this. So and you have to, like, agree that
So it's just a bunch of Utah scams,
I guess.
Well, isn't that the Mormon state?
Yeah. You have to agree that if you get divorced or annulled, it will be handled by the state of Utah. But the marriage license is recognized everywhere, just like any others. So works for me.
Congrats, man. This is all joking aside, that sounds amazing.
Well, we're probably, we'll have like a real ceremony at some point when she's actually in the, like, maybe at like 4 or 5 years when she's actually in the US and we're, doing things. We'll have like a real wedding or a real reception or something. But yeah, it's all just trying to get the paperwork finished. So
nice, man. Congrats.
Yeah, congrats. I do not envy you trying to figure out how to get an Iranian in the country, though.
It's not, dude, just the Antiguan thing's not cheap. None of this is all expensive. So but yeah, it's good. She's worth it. So
well, I hope to get to meet her in person one day.
Yeah.
She's really funny on camera and across phone.
Yeah, if we kind of figured if this was very short notice, like the Utah thing was very short notice. If this didn't work, we figured we could try and schedule the same sort of thing after I come back from Antigua, and maybe even invite, my parents or you or somebody else to, come up there and attend in person. But
yeah, I can make it work for a short period. Yeah.
Do what?
I could make a trip up there. Yeah.
But we'll do something either when we have to move or when you can all come down to Antigua. So
okay. Well,
all right.
I want to pay no taxes. Is that a thing?
I no idea. You like the I mean, I'm sure there is there are tax advantages to like starting a business in Antigua. I don't know what there are otherwise. I haven't
What
even
they
looked
are.
to see what the property taxes are. I mean, hopefully there's nothing else crazy that I haven't figured out, but I don't know. I got to figure all that out in the next few weeks. So
Is it a Caribbean island? Like, I have
Yeah.
no idea where this place
yes,
is.
it's
South of the Caymans, right?
Oh, it's next to Montserrat. Okay.
It's
Yeah. got it.
definitely like in line with the hurricanes. I thought it was farther south than like the hurricane path, but apparently the hurricanes all just kind of go up into the Gulf. Like I don't know. I never paid attention to how the Caribbean islands get hit, but
Need to build that cinder block house.
well, there are a bunch of houses for sale that are clearly very well built. So I'm not too worried about that. I've been through plenty of hurricanes. And if it's really bad, if she's a citizen, we can go somewhere else where there's not a hurricane. We can go to El Salvador for a few weeks if there's a hurricane coming. So, yeah.
Sweet. Well, Mechanic, what's up, man? How you been? What's been going on for the last 2 months? What were you so busy about?
It's been a long time. Like, it's the amount of stuff that's gone on in Bitcoin kind of warrants upping the pace of these roundtables a bit. And we've done the opposite. So it's really difficult to kind of, compress everything down into something manageable because so much has, like, the last time we did a show was the day that they opened that pull request, right? For messing up op return. And since then, so much has happened that I don't really know even where to start because that pull request ended up getting closed and then another one opened. And there's been, since back when that happened, I think 1% of the network was running Bitcoin nodes. Now 14% of the network is running Bitcoin nodes.
It's at 14 now? I saw 13 not too long ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like
Creeping up.
13.8 of the listening nodes or something. A lot of people have been annoyed and but didn't pull the trigger, and they're slowly just moving over, right? So, and that has been a grueling battle, and there's been so many podcasts and arguments and blockings and apparently even death threats and all these horrible things. And again, I don't even.
The drama
we're probably
gets
going to
so
get into
retarded.
it, but there's been too much really to talk about. There's probably been, I think, Vegas and Prague conferences have happened since as well, and those are obviously very significant. We had Vegas just be like someone compiled all the times people talked about stable coins, and it was like just
That's all that
an
video.
8-minute clip of stablecoin, and it just seems to be an invasion, a cultural replacement of Bitcoin is amazing, but you don't need to actually take custody of it anymore. That's a bit antiquated. Like you just need you just need to buy stock in a company that will buy some Bitcoin, and that's, really good. Like there seems to have been a complete corruption of the culture at the conference level, and I maintain it has been at the developer level as well. So yeah, we're kind of watching a horrible thing go on in Bitcoin and a strong reaction against it. So this is welcome to Civil War 2.0.
At least it's soft fork Civil War. At least it's not hard fork Civil War yet.
Well, those are easy. That's why
Those are
everyone keeps
easy.
pushing the anti-spammers like me to just fork. Because they're like, oh, that'd be so easy. It's just free money, basically, for the people that don't fork. So, no, we're not doing that.
I find it really interesting that a subset of the people who claimed that filtering and disconnecting from nodes and all this stuff, like doing this at the network level, was the slippery slope to full-on censorship. And then I just saw a proposal the other day of how you can make it so your Bitcoin core disconnects from all Bitcoin NOTs nodes. And I'm like, if there was evidence that one of your arguments was total gaslighting bullshit and you didn't actually care about it, it was just used so that you could paint the other guys as censorship, what would it look like? What would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we live in cloud cuckoo land because really
Is Israel behind this too? I feel
Probably.
like
Bitcoin NOTs nodes have too much oil.
It's just I don't know what's going on, but I feel like it's
They need
somehow
democracy,
APAC
yeah.
is behind everything.
You know what, man? I have the parallels between what's gone on geopolitically and what's going on in Bitcoin are just the debate around what happened with Iran. Because since our last pod as well, World War III kind of almost happened and then suddenly didn't
Oh, yeah,
happen.
that almost happened.
Yeah, but all of the discourse around that reminded me so. Maybe I'm just too close to the whole debate, right? Because a lot of people are going to be like, "Who cares?" Like we changed a standardness policy in Bitcoin Core. It's not like World War III bouncing on a knife edge, but it got to a scale where it was all just politics rather than sincere arguments, and it felt so similar because it just feels like everyone is like we know that this person on Fox News right now is absolutely saying the exact opposite of what they said yesterday, and they're just pretending they didn't. Like, it's so annoying to watch. And you're just like, now I just need to rely on human beings using their discernment and going, yeah, this is a lie. Because they're going to push this narrative so hard, and a bunch of people are just going to believe it. So that's kind of been the state of discourse. Everything should have been out in the open. The minute it was, but I still see it. I still see people every day, like Peter Todd, going, yeah, we got rid of the op return filter because it doesn't do anything. And I'm every time just showing them this stupid chart I drew on like a paint app with my mouse. Loads of op returns up until exactly 80 bytes. And then after that, barely any. You can't just say that there's no difference and that nothing happened. And it's so annoying to me that people will still make that argument. In practice, your spam filters don't do anything. In practice, they do. You mean in theory they don't do anything because it all remains consensus valid. And people are literally using the opposite word than what they mean. You mean in theory, not in practice. And I'll see these posts come out like, look, man, the filter doesn't do anything. I'm like, well, then leave it. You know you're lying. Leave it if it doesn't do anything. No, because technical debt, and we don't leave silly things inside the code base that don't belong there. All right, is it that? Or is it just the fact that it does something and you want to stop that thing from happening? So, yeah, it's been really, really annoying, guys.
Steve, how you doing, Steve?
I don't think I have anything as exciting as Zoom wedding or the kind of trauma politics that Mechanic lives in. I've been like rappelling in deep caves, searching for artifacts deep in the blockchain. My life's pretty good, man. I got a 2 terabyte internal SSD hard drive, and
that's big news.
Made some real quick ways to like look at these hundreds of millions of outputs like at a glance with heat maps and looking at patterns and stuff. And yeah, man, I'm a Bitcoin archaeologist right now.
That sounds fun.
Chain archaeologist.
How's UTX Oracle coming? What's changed in the last 2 months?
It's really good. I mean, I just love experimenting with different algorithms and different screening and filtering methods to make the on-chain price pop out more. I think so. I'm going to give this presentation in Riga, and I think I'll finally make it clear to people how this is the dominant signal on-chain, and it's so dominant that I'm going to make a bold claim that the USD imprint on-chain is the most well-preserved record of human economic activity ever, because of it's a trade for one good for the other. And if you just think about all the ways trades are recorded, like stone tablets, computers, paper, whatever, there's nothing as decentralized and well-preserved as the blockchain. And the dominant thing on the blockchain is the trade of Bitcoin for dollars. So it's kind of like as solid as tree ring chemical explorations. Like if you take samples of tree ring cores and you look for the different type of chemicals that appeared in the atmosphere over time, you'll see exactly when the nuclear bombs went off and exactly when this kind of stuff happened. And the record of that it's unlike any other kind of record. because it's completely decentralized. You got all these trees independently recording the exact same thing. You know exactly when it happened because of the tree rings. And that kind of record is just so much different.
You can't do anything with it. You can't alter it at all.
It would be so hard to change it or to make it misrepresentative.
Yeah, it's like immutable. So like the Bitcoin blockchain itself is the most immutable digital record like we'll ever have. And the USD price is the strongest signal on that record. So I think it's like the difference with the Bitcoin blockchain and tree rings or ice cores or something like that is that Bitcoin's like it reproduces itself. You know, it's what do you call that? It's self-replicating.
Mm-hmm. So, dude, I got a question. This is absolutely blowing my mind. This is seriously amazing what you've uncovered here. Is there anything else in the Bitcoin system, or, well, specifically what I mean, is there anything else that isn't Bitcoin itself that is pointed to with such consistency as its dollar price?
You mean like, are there any patterns on chain which are as like consistent as the dollar price? Or,
yeah, I mean, because the dollar isn't part of Bitcoin, but it's being pointed to constantly with the actions. Like if all knowledge was wiped out of human beings, is the point, and some alien race discovered the blockchain, they could do the analysis you're doing and be like, there seemed to be another currency here.
Mm-hmm. There's something else that's pricing the amounts. This is the movement. Like you could reproduce the dollar chart from it and know that there was some asset being traded against. They probably assume it was wheat.
Yeah. So other things like NFTs and things like that, they could never reconstruct those because they could never get the systems of interpretation back. But the pure dollar price is there. It's just, you just need to understand how to process the data and uncover it. So is there anything else of that nature in there? Like sleeping patterns?
Yeah, I think you could do sleeping patterns. Yeah, I haven't done it. Well, one thing I have done for sure that jumps out right away is the weekday weekend pattern. I thought that was just like a Western culture kind of thing. And maybe it is because Western culture dominates Bitcoin. But yeah, if you look at transaction activity on Saturday, Sunday, they're on average like consistently 65% of a weekday. It looks like an accordion. Like when you look at the heat maps, you just see these like, 5 solid bars, 2 blank bars, 5 solid bars, 2 blank bars. Like, and I bet you could do, I haven't done this, but I bet you could do time of day to see when like the sun is over the Pacific. When is the sun directly over the middle of the Pacific? Is that UTC midnight? No. Or something like that. I bet you could see that.
I mean, anyone that's dealt with
that's so crazy to think about, like how many like patterns of like human behavior you could just start to extract from that.
I love it, dude. I'm gonna spend the rest of my life doing this, I think.
Do people do more transactions at like the top of the hour? Is there any like heat map stuff there?
I haven't seen it. I haven't looked at that detail.
Interesting. I mean, well, you can't because that's mempool level. That's not block level.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can get the time of day from the block, but what was I going to say, man? But one thing that I've been doing recently is just like taking all the pay to Taproot transactions out of there. I mean, like if you do my heat maps with and without pay to Taproot, it's totally clear that like so much of the noise is associated with pay to Taproot. And it doesn't add any value to any kind of the analysis I do.
Yeah, Taproot is looking, given that we can't really agree on putting any sensible guardrails on it, and 88% of the Taproot outputs are inscriptions related, it just makes it look like an absolute stain. It's such an embarrassment how that whole thing turned out.
And the use case, it doesn't even seem to be being utilized for the proposed use case, because it's like it's kind of unfinished for the major benefits it was even supposed to provide for like cross input like aggregation and stuff.
Yeah, well, that didn't work out. We did a bit of it, but we don't get the full benefit of Schnorr. and it doesn't look like that's ever going to happen. But to be clear, though, it's not the Taproot inscriptions thing. You could still have done inscriptions before Taproot. It just would have been a bit less efficient, I think, a bit more expensive.
Weren't there limits on transactions, like the way you could do transaction size? Like, wasn't part of Taproot specifically allowing the witness to be 1 megabyte?
I don't know. It might be.
Wait, say that again. Say that again, Guy.
Wasn't there a change in how large you could make the witness data with Taproot that wasn't there before, because of the assumption that if you had a tree big enough in whatever construction you had to be able to actually unwrap the whole thing like on the chain, whereas, you know, the signature was just like, it was all going to be an aggregate in the Taproot. So because they didn't know, like, okay, well, what could people build with this? Well, the assumption was like, I don't know. So let's just make the limit the full block limit, basically, of 1 megabyte.
I did a deep dive into this about a year ago, and it turns out like what they're worried about with a really long signature, or really long scripts in general, is operations that kind of have that cascading thing and also require you to check multi-sigs and stuff like that. So checking multi-sig was the thing that they thought like, oh, this is the reason we have to keep the scripts short. And then when you have that really super efficient Taproot way of doing check multi-sig, they're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're not really worried about check multi-sigs and the script size anymore. So let's just remove that script length limit. And that was kind of like snuck in, I thought. Like before Taproot, there was strict limits on the amount of bytes that a script could be. And then they just removed that, I guess, because they didn't think there could be anything bad put in there. But yeah, it was for that reason.
That's a shame,
I think it was kind of a, like, this was only in for this reason. And then it seemed that one of the benefits of Taproot would have been the size and complexity of scripts that you could make, and still be efficient from the setting up the transaction and the happy path, you know, exiting from it.
I think this happens a lot with complex systems. Like there's a rule in the system, and the rule that people think it's for is X. But it's just a rule that's been in there.
But it kind of does a Y and Z, but
exactly, you remove it and you realize that rule was doing a lot more than you thought it was doing.
And it might not even have been intended like that.
Exactly.
It's just there's so many other factors at play that it ends up affecting how people can use it in a different way.
Well, this is exactly the point, because this is the argument in op return where they get rid of it, saying, look, you can make op returns bigger than 80 bytes anyway. This whole data carrier size fiasco is meaningless because it's already consensus valid. And I'm saying, but look at the effect of it being there. You don't really get bigger than 80 byte op returns yet. And like I keep saying, because if the highway doesn't exist, the traffic is not going to be on that highway. The minute you make it, then the traffic starts. You just backward framing of it, saying the reason there's no bigger than 80 byte op returns is because there's no economic demand for it, they say. And I'm like, again, the reason there's no economic demand for it is because it's a pain at the moment. The minute you make it easy, the economic demand will exist. Supply precedes demand. Right? It's not as simple as just saying, I'm not going to create this product because there's obviously no economic demand for it. Well, if it doesn't exist yet, of course there's no economic demand for it. So, you know.
Yeah, this is why when I was talking to Antoine, there were a couple of points or questions that I think he kind of misunderstood. I've been meaning to get back to it and actually do like a specific address to that in the post. But I probably won't. I'll probably just have to make a completely different video or do this episode. But like one of them was like, I asked him if Hashcash was going to prevent, or does it increase the cost of spam? And my intent was to ask an economic question, like, would it decrease spam because of basically how it behaves? like the fact that it's adding a cost that's easy for an honest user and expensive for a spammer. And I can't remember exactly how he interpreted it. It was something specific to email, which it wasn't really relevant to email. It was about the economics of adding a marginal cost that affects spammers more than it affects honest people. Does that change the amount of behavior of that you see? And obviously, I think the answer is yes. Like, that's why the Hashcash proposal and proof of work was initially like come up with to begin. Like, in the beginning, that was its purpose, right? And so it's not about can we filter it? It's not about can we stop it from happening? It's certainly not about a soft fork to make something that's valid invalid, because it is subjective in a sense. It is it's based on the person and the transaction itself, like how it's being used. And so adding a marginal cost to something that is spam would decrease the spam. Like, it just does. Of course, it doesn't stop spam from being able to go in. And you also, in a sense, you don't really you want it to have to pay more so that if it's actually worthwhile, it's worth paying more. Like, if there's a copyright issue with Craig Wright and the white paper, like, if it adds 2x the fee to stick the white paper into the transaction, okay, I'll even donate. Like, I could think that's actually to use it as a way to print this in a defensive way so that it cannot be legally used against people. I think that's it's all valid transactions. So if somebody's willing to pay the difference, they should go there. They can easily do that. But the problem is that spam is cheaper. The spam has been given a discount, and we're not thinking about that as something that needs to be corrected. Like, it needs to at least be paying exactly what a legitimate transaction would in the context of putting data on the chain. And the signature discount is producing the exact opposite result. It's making it cheaper to put arbitrary data than it is to use it for legitimate purposes.
This has been a point forever, because there is discourse in the record from the rationalizations behind the witness discount and arriving at the number 4, saying, when adding the whole concept of block weight and all that will discount you by 75% for witness data. It specifically says we don't want to go any bigger than that in case people start leveraging this for arbitrary data storage inside the witness section of transactions. We don't want to make it any bigger than 4, because that's why all the rationale I've laid out for why we want to discount it in the first place, shrinking the UTXO set, can't keep going forever for that reason. That was laid out clearly. And how is it used? By inscriptions to massively bloat the UTXO set. So again, it blew up in our face and had the exact opposite effect of what we wanted to do with it.
I will ask, I want to Steelman actually the opposing.
Real quick. Is there anything that, like, do we have any clue what someone might want to do? Like, is there are there any sort of quiet proposals for things in Bitcoin that would require a lack of a filter on op return?
No, op return is necessarily the sandbox for non-Bitcoin activity. And it was always just an olive branch. There's nothing anyone needs to use op return for that's native to Bitcoin. The closest thing is stuff like Samurai guys have maybe an argument, or even the kinds of proposals around L2 for Lightning, or maybe even just stuff that's like, if we want to use Bitcoin as money, there are things that maybe there are additional data that can be stored in conjunction with transactions for helping with tertiary systems. So in Samurai's case, we want to label stuff that goes on when we coordinate these coin joins, because people that have already been through a round go free the next time, and we want to publicly store that information in op returns. It's no one's interest apart from the people doing the coin joins, but it is relevant to Bitcoin as money. Same with backups of your multisig with bare multisig, and same with storing, the stuff that LN symmetry needs, where you do away with the current justice mechanism and you make it so that you can close a channel with using any previous output. You can store stuff like that inside the blockchain, and it does arguably make Bitcoin better money, though it's still irrelevant to everyone except you, whereas your UTXOs are relevant to everyone. So it's a lot more.
It's mostly just a public billboard for you to be able to fulfill it later, but it doesn't actually have any meaning in the context of what's actually going on chain.
Yeah, specifically.
It's really just kind of you using as an independent, they're not going to take it down host, so that both parties can use it without losing the data.
And sidechains and merge mining will always be a thing, which means 40 bytes of op return is enough for everything. Then no one needs to use more than that for 99% of the use cases that might leverage Bitcoin in some way and don't want to be annoying about it. For the millionth time, there's a reason no one is up here complaining about open timestamps, because you're just hashing stuff and fitting it inside tiny op returns usually.
Open timestamp sucks.
Yeah, well, it does now, but it didn't used to. Now we have to. But yeah, I mean, it does get really annoying because these ideological people keep saying just fork already. Like David Bailey yelled at me, "You got to go fork! Like, just do it." Lots of other people are like constantly like prodding me, saying I'm the next Roger Ver, and I'm like, you haven't understood the first thing about this conversation, which is about what you were talking about, Guy. It's about how can you place obstacles in front of consensus valid activity that's harmful to the system, rather than changing what's consensus valid every 5 minutes to try and prevent these use cases 100%.
The notion of that, when nobody's even arguing, like you're not even allowing the conversation to go. Like, again, people are arguing in completely different pools, and I want to steel man actually by conceding an argument on the opposing side, just so that we can actually, because I'm curious your thoughts on it. But like the idea of fighting, like imagine like trying to change the email protocol, change SMTP in order to stop Nigerian prince emails. Like exactly. There's in no way makes any sense whatsoever. And it doesn't solve the problem because it is a moving, like, of course, soft forks are insanely difficult. They're insanely risky. It doesn't even make sense to entertain a soft fork for something that, like, spam isn't that big of a deal. It's a problem, but it's not like risk a soft fork level problem, because you're introducing reorg risk. You're introducing a transaction validity risk. I mean, the number of things. And also, if there is any spillover, again, you want a way around it. You don't want anything to be completely final, because you don't know what the future is going to hold, and you want to be able to pull it back if there's a reasonable reason. There's
a slippery slope to censorship argument there for real. If we can start soft forking to prevent out certain things, then it's 100% eliminated. At the moment, the spam filters aren't arguably censorship, because people can still get in blocks and Bitcoin remains censorship resistant, even if their transaction is widely disliked. That's a very important principle. And sorry to interrupt you, but that was the main back and forth. One back and forth with Gloria. That's the one she keeps making. Look, spam filters don't work because Bitcoin is censorship resistant, and this is a good thing, and you need to celebrate it. And this is an embarrassing level of understanding for someone with merge commit access to Bitcoin Core. This is insane. That's one of the 5 most important people in the world. Why don't you understand the difference between spam filtration and censorship? They're not the same thing. They are literally opposite in concept. Censorship requires 100% elimination.
Well, and again, it requires some sort of targeting, which is not,
and it's based on people. It's not. Right. It's not based on a kind of activity.
It's not about type or format.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Bitcoin is censoring everything that's not consensus valid anyway.
It's not a Bitcoin transaction.
Like, we've been censoring opportunity. I had somebody, I had multiple people actually come at me with this one in like a thread, and I'd be like, man, you have got to stop that argument, because it's just bad. Like, there are actual things to argue about here. There are things that are in gray areas or that you could interpret differently. And I think there's a meaningful argument on the other side. I do. And I think Antoine hit some of those points.
Yeah, go on, hit me with the steel man you were going for, because I think I interrupted before you got to the main pit.
Okay, yeah. So the steel man is concede on their side that the filtering does work, because it does. If they would actually just concede that and hold stronger to the argument that it's bad that filtering works because of things like slipstream, because of the that's the other thing, is that they have two arguments that are completely contradictory. Is the idea that filtering doesn't work, but it works well enough that it causes mining to heavily centralize around large pools and large miners, because it doesn't work, but it does actually create a huge economic benefit for them, and it's going to centralize the whole network. Right. It's like, well, those are two completely different arguments. You're saying that somebody has to go around the mempool and the public network because it does work, and thus it's bad. Like, actually just hold to that argument and quit with the stupid shit that it doesn't work.
We cannot nail them down, because every single time someone like Gloria, who obviously should know better, tells me filters don't work. Look, here's an op return bigger than 80 bytes. And I always respond with this stupid chart saying, yes, 99% of op returns are within the filter though, and less than 1% are outside of it, because it basically works. It's just not watertight. She's like, well, it doesn't matter.
My spam filters don't work on all the emails.
Yeah.
But it stops a bunch of them.
They keep saying spam filters just don't work. And every time I debunk that argument, everyone comes back at me with, stop straw manning our position. We know that they work somewhat. It's just that they create bad second order effects. And then I say, if you want to argue
stop
that,
the first argument and argue the real one.
Because I keep having to go, that's a different position. And that one I disagree with too. But stop telling me I'm straw manning it when people like Gloria are making this exact argument. And Greg Maxwell has made it too. Every time I debate these people, they go, yeah, you think spam filtration's great. And then they dig up and cherry pick some transaction that got around a spam filter. Every time they do it. And I'm like, when you stop making this argument, I will stop contesting it. It is as stupid as, have you seen the Breaking Bad meme where it's, we need to attack Iran because they have nuclear weapons. Well, why aren't you attacking North Korea? Are you crazy? They have nuclear weapons. It's this.
I've not even seen that.
I keep going round and round and round with them, and they just refuse to ever hold a single position. And again, I'm this noob level Bitcoin enthusiast versus the core developers. I shouldn't be the one to keep pointing out these ridiculous technical inaccuracies or just flawed thinking. If I understand what you're trying to get at here, your point is that they need to stick to actually good arguments and stop saying they don't work when they obviously do. But the argument, that's where it kind of got buried. And I had all these backs and forths with Greg Maxwell and a few others where they're just saying, look, all right, let's stop pretending for 5 minutes. We know that the spam filter got rid of more than 99% of the stuff it was supposed to get rid of. Obviously, it works. But here's the problem. If we all start having divergent mempools and things like slipstream, yada, yada, those are much more credible arguments because they're invoking things that can actually occur. And the two there...
And have. Like, they can point to examples of, like, a meaningful, it's somewhat meaningful, like, market where Mara is getting paid something for out-of-band transactions.
Do you know how much Mara have made from Slipstream?
No, I know it's not. I know it's not a lot. I think somebody like Unhosted Marcellus or somebody had posted some sort of a chart. I can't remember. Do you have the details on it?
Yeah. So they've made a sum total of 20 Bitcoins. This is nowhere near the cost of implementing the thing. So...
Of implementing Slipstream? 20 Bitcoins?
Yeah. For a pool that mines every day at least that.
Well, think about it. It makes sense that Slipstream or like these private, mempool, things wouldn't work as well if mining is decentralized, right? Like the more mining becomes centralized, but the more you can actually, if the Atom works and you can decentralize the templates and you can you can impose filters that make 80 or 90% of the network filtered, then it gets very hard to get your shitty things into the block, into the time chain or whatever.
You're exactly right. And this has been one of their points. Block propagation slows down if the network is filtering out spam. If a block contains a bunch of spam, that block propagates more slowly, and they keep saying that hurts the network, and that hurts other miners.
It hurts the spammers.
It hurts Mara. It hurts Mara because people won't be building on their blocks faster.
Yes, and they're saying,
else.
But their point is, if mining is centralized to the point where there's a giant miner on the network that finds enough blocks that it actually helps them if their block moves more slowly because they just get a head start in a race they're pretty likely to win, right? If you have 40% of the hash rate and you find a block and it takes 3 seconds for the rest of the network to validate your block and start building on top of it, then you get a 3-second head start, which you can actually use because you're that big. And this was me like slapping Greg Maxwell in the face. Like, Bitcoin can't have a miner that has 40% of the hash rate. Everything else breaks then as well. And guess what? Even if we allow all of the trash in our mempools, they can just construct transactions locally, not broadcast them to the network, and fill their block up with them so that those transactions are unfamiliar to the network and the block still propagates slowly. This is meaningless. It's an attack. It's a point that only exists in this very narrow context, which doesn't matter when you zoom out. So the block propagation argument and the mining centralization argument is so annoying, because if you decentralize mining like it's supposed to be and like we're trying to do, and I appreciate you having highlighted this recently, Guy, what Datum does by pushing template construction out to the miners. If you do that, then you go back to where the rhetoric used to lie in Bitcoin Core. When they released compact block filters in 2016, they said, miners, you need to respect the new spam filters, otherwise your blocks will move more slowly. It wasn't network. You need to figure out what miners might want to mine and relay it, otherwise you will suffer, which is the new narrative. And the latter,
that's the thing that gets me, is that it's the flip in the presumption. It's the flip in the premise of, it's like mining is centralized. We have to align ourselves with the giant miners because otherwise it's going to hurt us. It's like, well, the miners aren't the network. Like, and if it's so bad that we must align with the largest miners, even when it's not beneficial, when it's something that is like questionable as to whether or not it's even a good thing to do, well, then we have a problem, and we need to solve that deeper problem way before we're talking about how we're trying to homogenize everything to meet the miners' demands rather than the opposite. Like what are we conceding? That we need to make sure that we're doing what Mara wants us to do. Like bullshit, you know?
The point they're making is that Mara is so big and it's so problematic for the network. We can allude to improving things just a little bit by making what Mara puts in their slipstream blocks available to more miners by relaying it around the network. And then Mara is supposed to hate that, even though they're barely making any money from slipstream anyway. And I did tweet that I think it's over. I think slipstream is going to be winded down. A few people have messaged me saying I'm talking nonsense, but I actually think I'm going to be proved right on that. But nonetheless, my main retort to this has just been, hey, if you guys really want to decentralize mining, relaying as much spam as possible is not going to move the needle. You need to take the problem a lot more seriously than that. You're not going to reverse the tide when it comes to Foundry and Mara. Or the thing that Bitmain announced at the Vegas conference, they're making their own version of non-standard transaction solicitation, a thing, and they've combined with F2Pool, I think, or VIA. There was, or was it Binance Pool? There were like 3 pools that did an announcement. They were part of the campaign umbrella.
I had a thing, and I think Citria was partnering with them or something, right? Is that right?
I don't know.
Is that somebody was talking about, like, they're now allowing people to make their own templates or something?
Oh, well, Bitmain have said they want to decentralize template construction. They want to do what Ocean is doing. I don't know how seriously I take that. Generally, what I've seen happen here, and this is pretty funny, guys. I have the inside scoop on this stuff, which is fun. Stratum v2 is really just not going to work the way people have wanted it to. There's a reason it's been so many years and nothing has really manifested from it.
As I understood, and let me just caveat this real quick, is one of its major first purposes was actually to fix hash rate hijacking, right?
Yeah, so it's definitely going to work for improving Stratum v1 by encrypting communications and making them more efficient. That is a no-brainer improvement, but it has nothing to do with decentralization of mining. All that does is make it so that your ISP can't snoop and hijack what you're doing as a miner, which is, it's a no-brainer improvement. Stratum v1 should always have been encrypted, and it wasn't, and it's taken this long to get it encrypted with Stratum v2. But for the topic of decentralization of mining, specifically template construction, that's the job declarator or the job negotiator, as it used to be called in Stratum v2, which is something that got bolted onto it much later that does what Datum does. So, on paper they do the same thing, but I think Foundry want to decentralize template construction because they see the way the tide is blowing. Ocean is growing a lot. Ocean now is over 10 exahash, which is a lot.
Dang, I didn't realize y'all grown that much.
Yeah, we grew a lot. A week ago, a big miner called Peak jumped on, and they added about 6 exahash to the pool, and they're using Datum. Wow. And they're making their own blocks. They've already found a couple of blocks.
I know a couple. I might actually be. The only thing is that, like, I if I do the investment, I won't be able to mine my own. I'll be able to pick a template, but I won't be able to mine, like, connect to my node and make my own template, which makes me a little bit like,
why not?
If I was going to invest a lot into mining, I really kind of want to. I think it's just because of how they're doing their setup. They are planning on using Ocean, but
you're investing in like a mining interest.
Possibly, yeah. A really clever idea from the context of, like, where do they get their energy? And so I'm deeply considering it. I've been talking with them like every couple of days.
Guy's a corporate miner now.
I'm a corporate miner.
You're a corporate miner.
Listen, I'm going to mine in all the ways. Okay, I'll have a little bit of corporate mining. I'll be heating my house. I'll have my bit axes. I'm going to set my dryer up. Like, just suck it. Okay, like I gotta play all the cards.
For the next guys roundtable, we're all going to need to be SOC compliant. So just
this show is brought to you by Mara.
Yeah. Hey, I've got an analogy high level for the spam stuff floating around in my head. You know how there's that saying, rising tide lift all boats?
Yeah.
I think that there's not a good opposite for that saying, but it would be something like lowering tide exposes all trash on the seafloor.
I don't know.
We'll put a pin in that one.
I've been thinking about the ways in which it works. I think it works well because, like, I think if transaction fees were higher, we'd be having this conversation a lot less. I mean, it doesn't mean that, like,
that's true.
We should do things to make it easier for there to be more trash on the ocean floor.
I don't think so. I think Bitcoin as a medium of exchange is always. It feels like Bitcoin has these two equally important use cases: the store of value and the medium of exchange. And you've got literally Michael Saylor now buying pizzas on Bitcoin Pizza Day and announcing that he's spending dollars because you shouldn't spend Bitcoins.
Well, he doesn't have any Bitcoin. How are you supposed to spend it if you don't have any?
Yeah, well, aside from the fact that he doesn't have any, let's assume he does. He shouldn't be pushing that because it's an undermining of what Bitcoin is. It is a payment system. It's not just a store of value. And it sucks that he's pushing that narrative. But it's always been kind of the weaker thing. The store of value was the hard problem. It was the amazing thing we didn't want to put in jeopardy for Bcashes and all that. But the trouble is it isn't everything. And now it's become everything. So it doesn't work.
I think the context of, like, where we are in the life cycle, I think I think the narrative there is way less important than it actually kind of seems like. I really just think during the monetization phase and before we have a larger network, because it is more of like being on a Bitcoin standard, it's more of a hassle to spend it. Like I have to go, it's a couple extra steps, but I just do it because everything that I do on the Bitcoin side is so much easier than the awful fight with fiat. But in the monetization phase, I think it makes perfect sense that narrative is just the one that leads because it's the narrative that pays the most.
I understand that, but my point though, with response to what Steve was saying, is that it's always kind of a drag. To get people spending Bitcoin means other people have to go out and get merchants and have these awkward conversations where it's like, do you take Bitcoin? And like getting rejected and all that stuff. Like we know that's a hard part of it. And it's as hard as getting people to run nodes. And if it's going to fail ultimately, I mean, it might. And that's the problem. Just like with getting people to run nodes, like most Bitcoiners just aren't going to do it. And that if that's the case, then we're in trouble. And the trouble is, all this is to say, when the massive spam wave started in 2023, that was enough to knock out a lot of the organic growth of Bitcoin being used by Bitcoiners as a medium of exchange, because it just became ruinously expensive and really unpredictable. And that ruins organic growth. Like a bunch of people, it was a tragedy of the commons kind of scenario where there's only so much block space and there's only so many use cases it can accommodate. And this massive hypey scam thing, like it turned into a casino for a year. And that just meant a bunch of people that are like, had a nice little thing going on. Like I'll open a Lightning channel once a month or something, whatever it is they might do, were just priced out of it. And they didn't have the interest in competing with like some VC funded scam coin that's doing its thing on Bitcoin and just prepared to blow millions of dollars on transaction fees for the next week or whatever until their scheme dies down and then the next thing comes along. So that's the problem with all that. There's so many people like Lynn Alden that I've argued with who are like, spam's bad, but on-chain transaction fees will outprice it eventually. And I just think that's conjecture. There's no evidence of that. And it seems like the opposite happened. It seems like there really was some organic use. And now we're in the middle of a bull market and I regularly see empty blocks, which is not seeing them today, but they've been empty. Like there's been a lot of empty blocks over the last few months.
It's been a really long time since we've had on-chain transactions rise for regular transaction activity. It's like we haven't seen that environment since 2017.
Yeah, and that was fake as well because that was more Jihan spam.
We need a crash, man. We need a hack. We need an exchange hack. Then you'll see it.
I still think when it comes to medium of exchange, we're trying to put the cart before the horse, because you talk about like, we got to run out and have a bunch of awkward conversations with merchants and stuff, is that you have to have a threshold of people who want to hold Bitcoin that is high enough.
Or that have their wealth in Bitcoin.
Yeah. That's what I mean, for them to accept it. Like what will make the medium of exchange phase happen is when merchants demand to hold Bitcoin, when they want Bitcoin from the customer. And I really think we're like the monetary shift is just super fucking slow. It's super slow because it's a mental shift in all of the participants in the economy that Bitcoin is a better way to hold, is a better thing to hold than dollars. Until that point, there's going to be an extreme monetization phase, which is people aggressively holding Bitcoin and not letting it go. But that accelerates the recognition from all the middle participants going, why is this something worth holding? Because that just takes a long time to have that mental shift.
This is fiat clown world. We still have to teach all the normies how to save. Like they don't know how to save. So like they need to understand that
ain't happening.
Bitcoin is something you hold on to. Then when they're out of debt because they've held on to Bitcoin, then suddenly there's this big pool of wealth that merchants and other people's want to get out of people's hands,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with that. But I think in one sense, yeah, the putting the cart before the horse is the correct analogy, because Bitcoin is a store of value before it's a medium of exchange. I've always been fine with that mental model of how hyper Bitcoinization would go. But in another sense, what Bitcoin more fundamentally is it's two horses. It's the medium of exchange and the store of value. It has to be both of them at the same time. Yeah. Because there's just something more fundamental to it. Then I always use gold as an analogy, because gold remains a useful store of value even if you can spend it in 0 places. It doesn't undermine its utility as a store of value, because it doesn't chemically, molecularly collapse if no one maintains a network that is part of what it is. Whereas Bitcoin doesn't work like that. If no one's running nodes and no one's transacting and no one cares about the blockchain, but you have a bunch of UTXOs, they're worthless. It's not the same as gold, where they remain stable. Like they literally just fall apart. There are no UTXOs if there's no one caring enough to maintain the other aspect of what the network is. And I think that's not overly philosophical. That actually matters eventually. It just takes a while before you see that all collapse. And I do think, like, for someone as intelligent as Michael Saylor, I think I'm like, how have you not put that together? Like, it's just as important for people to hodl as it is for companies like you to maintain what the thing is at its fundamental level. Like MicroStrategy, all these companies need to be holding their own private keys and using their own nodes, and always using Bitcoin in a way that means you don't require a trusted third party. And all your messaging should reflect that. Every new Bitcoiner should be running a node and using that node to verify any new coins they acquire. Because if that stops being the norm, or too large of a percentage of Bitcoin activity doesn't work like that, then you lose all of it. And I think that's not an exaggeration. That is some rot that can creep into the system really quickly, and it's happening.
Like, because everybody can't, manage their own UTXOs. Like, if the whole world wanted to do it, you're not going to get, you can't. You're at some point, if the whole world's trying to own their own UTXOs, you're going to have, you're not going to be able to make $100 transaction, right? And so what it needs to be is we need to present it like, well, this is what the real people do, the real Bitcoiners do, and make it sort of like recognize that it's like a status that you want to achieve, is the ability to get to the point where you can run your own node and you can make, whatever size transaction is necessary to open your own Lightning channel with your, with a whatever service, is, or with whatever, I don't know, cypherpunk group that you're trying to, network with. And that way, it's something people want to attain, but I don't think it's good to tell people that have, only have $100 to go and like I kind of feel bad when I'm making $100 on-chain transactions, because I mean, $100 is fine right now. Transactions are 30 cents or whatever, but I feel like at some point in the future, the transactions are likely to be very costly. And if you have the more UTXOs you have that are small amounts, the worse that gets for those people. And so sending somebody $20 on chain seems like I'm setting them up for, failure in the future. Whereas if I feel very comfortable sending them $20 over Liquid or over, over
Lightning.
Yeah, Lightning, if they've got a service, an LSP or something like that.
That line of thinking is saying that the value of Bitcoin is going to go down, because if the value of Bitcoin goes up, then that $20 is $200 or whatever.
I think the value of Bitcoin will go up, but I think that the transaction costs are going to could really be huge if you look at the problem the way Guy's talked about on his show, that we're solving a multi-$100 trillion problem, and that it's actually going to be some of the biggest financial institutions in the world. They're going to be interacting with the chain, and that really most average Bitcoiners are going to be on second layers of some sort, and we're probably going to have some form of hash cash that's networked with Lightning and networked with, Liquid and whatever else. I agree. Everybody needs to hold their own keys. But I think if you're a noob and you don't have a lot of money, holding your own keys on Liquid is probably a better long-term solution. I mean, I just look at the fact that like there are people that had Bitcoin and like lost their, like, they didn't pay any attention to it for like 10 years. If you want to be, like decade proof in your holdings, if you give somebody I don't know, like there's so many wallets that have failed and gone away. If you want to give somebody something that will like they'll be able to just open up and it'll
that
work
just has
later.
longevity, like it's just always going to work for them no matter what. Like you can hand them something that just is Bitcoin, and it doesn't matter if they take 15 years to look at it, it's still just Bitcoin.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Jeff, but everybody is where I disagree, because not everybody has to use Bitcoin. And I really like the people that pedantically say Bitcoin is not for everybody, it's for anybody, which is a very different way to look at it.
I mean, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, so not everyone is going to use this thing because they just don't want to. And Bitcoin just can't accommodate a certain amount. There is necessarily a trade-off. If you want nodes and you want decentralized validation and all that, then you can't have blocks with enough space to store the entire world's, 10-cent transactions. It's just not a thing. And I know you know that. So it just comes down to there's only a few million of us at the moment, and the system just about works and it can sustain our activity. And other than that, they're just going to have to get well versed with things like Lightning. But we all know what's going to happen. Like even if we could scale Bitcoin and we could have each block be 1 gigabyte and still have as much decentralization of nodes as we do now, what people are going to do, Jeff. You know what they're going to do. They're going to use their Coinbase account to send you some sats. They're not actually going to do it in the way that we want them to, because people suck. And if you don't account for this in your worldview, then you're going to be not just disappointed, but you're going to get screwed as well. So I don't know what to do about this. And this is where I always go nuts at the Covenants bros, where I'm like, it's not a tech problem that people aren't taking custody of their stuff or a scaling problem. It's a will problem. People just don't want to take responsibility over their own stuff. I think Uncle Jim model is fine.
I think there's two parts to it. I think there is definitely part that is a technical, but the technical isn't coming into play right now. The technical will come into play after we get past the major store of value, like hockey stick, I think, in the context of like moving into a medium of exchange. Whereas the social value of holding your own coins will happen after decades and decades of rug pulls, corrupt governments. Like it will take a generation or two of teaching people how fucking stupid it is to trust people, like trust major institutions and trust political entities to be stable and
I got to push back on that. I got to push back, because that has happened over and over again. And if you can say it's generational thing, but it's not. It's more like a cycle thing. Like Mt. Gox goes slap, you just lost all your coins. And then, 3 years later, everyone's like, hey, have you heard of BlockFi? Why don't we leave all our money on Celsius or FTX? And it just...
How many of those are the same people though? Like it's in those cycles when the new phase, when the new era of like a new flood of people come in and they just learn the Mt. Gox lesson with BlockFi for the first time.
Yeah, a new service.
Like you don't have to explain hold your own keys to Venezuelans.
Okay, fair enough.
Mauricio understood that and his brother understood that, like they get that. But most of the time, if you do, you have to get burned. You have to get burned to really understand. Don't touch the pot.
It is generational, because if you look at like Eastern European countries that are closer to past communists, like you can see where they are in their stage of like, we're still using cash because we don't trust, we don't trust the banks or whatever. And there's constantly people in the fiat world trying to push them back into institutions. And I'm sure that there will be, pushes for that in Bitcoin. But I think Guy's right, is that you have to teach each new wave, like has to learn this lesson in some form or fashion.
And I really think the kind of secret to like holding your own keys is just about it. It goes back to the Nicholas Doria piece that I read of like understanding like custodianship and like being very, very clear about what it means to be a custodian versus holding your own keys. And that just the optionality for exit, unilateral exit, is what we need. We just need the optionality. And I think over a long enough time span, people will actually, but especially between trust groups, like within your trust circle, you're more likely to trust. But across like trust circles or across networks, across countries and borders and all of these things, we will need to set up like trust lists, like optionality of exit. And what I think ends up happening is that the chain behaves like a court, is that only when things go wrong or somebody is moving an enormous amount where it just has to be settled between two large institutions or governments, political entities, whatever it is, and they're willing to, or financial institutions, and they're willing to pay that cost for the settlement because of the significance, just the need of whatever exchange they're engaged in. But otherwise, it behaves like a court where like everyone is honest because you can pay $100 to go to the global decentralized court of Bitcoin and say, this is actually mine. And a lot of people say it's like, well, that means everything's below $100 is unsecured and everybody's screwed and everybody just it's only the rich people get to use it. It's like, no, it means that everything below $100 can't be stolen because you're burning it. You can always force the hand of the institution. You can always take it back. You have to pay for it in a fee, but you can always punish them. Like if they're going to try to steal $100 from 1 million people's accounts, well, everybody just publishes it to chain and they don't get shit. Like you end up in a situation where the court is just like lightning. Like I had this argument so many times with Paul Sork, and he's like, everything below the fee threshold is totally insecure because it's trusted and you can't send a 500 sat transaction. It's like, well, why does it work? Why do I send dozens of 21 sat 210 sat transaction? Because nobody can steal it. Like you're saying that yes, it's trusted in the sense that like I can't take it to chain, but neither can the guy trying to take it from me. Like it's secure because everybody's going to lose it, or it's a happy path. Those are the only two options. Nobody gets it or it goes through. And I think that kind of will exist in the same form. And I think the big way, I think kind of the secret to figuring out how to do, like, let's use ARC as an example, just because it could be something where like there's millions of people participating in it and everybody has the quote unquote take it to court option. But you're in one and I'm in another. I think the real kind of secret is to be able to move from one ARC to another ARC without actually going on chain, by being able to atomic swap the liquidity in one ARC to the payout of the liquidity in a different ARC, so that I can swap services and within each ARC, and I can just pick my provider and bounce. And if any provider ever tries to screw me, I just have that pay an on-chain fee to get the hell out. I don't know. I think it ends up behaving like a global financial court, that all political entities, all major like financial institutions, because you think like gold settles nothing. Gold settles no value. And I think Bitcoin is going to be settling every year $1 quadrillion in like not even a totally crazy time span, like 10 to 20 years. Because once you enter into that phase, it does it's going to do so much better. It's already doing like 4 times what gold does.
Yeah. So like I agree with all of these things. Like these are beliefs that I've held for like 15 years now, that like eventually Bitcoin's going to be used for these large value settlements, and coffee transactions can't go on chain and stuff like this. I mean, I still believe this, but we have to kind of be honest with ourselves a little bit, in the way that we used to say like transaction fees are going to get so high, and they just haven't. They're the same in dollar terms as they were in 2017 right now. Mm-hmm. And that's also happening with us thinking that Bitcoin was going to be used for large settlements only. Like if you look at where do most people spend their UTXOs at? It's right at $100. like the purchasing power, if you look at UTXOs in terms of their purchasing power over time, that's what's remained constant. Bitcoin is not being used to settle larger transactions. Bitcoin is being used to settle exactly $100 transactions, just like it always has been. It's remaining constant in terms of purchasing power. And I know you're going to say like, oh, it's about a hockey stick any time now and everything's going to change. But like,
I'm going to say it's getting worse then, because $100 is worth less and less in terms of purchasing
exactly.
power.
Yeah. The purchasing power is actually going down of like, it's not happening yet. I mean, like my belief is that, I mean, I agree with Mechanic, like the exchange is important. Medium of exchange is important. I think this is going to require massive layer 2 capabilities that are 100 times better than Lightning. I think what's likely going to happen is Bitcoin's going to be the settlement of monthly credit cards. And I think settlement payments with short-term credit things for payments and layer 2s, I think that should be considered a medium of exchange. You're just doing the exchange for a settlement of debt. It's not going to be an exchange for like a product or service, because I don't think anything layer 2 right now is at the point of competing with Visa for like short-term credit. I mean, maybe it'll happen, but yeah.
Let me jump back on a couple of things Guy said, actually, because I think there are situations where you have like what do you call them? ARC LSPs? What's the equivalent of those guys?
ARC service providers is their ASPs or whatever. I only use that as like kind of an example because it's like one of those things. It's like a pooled thing, but yeah.
I think what I want to stress, maybe this missing from your analysis, and I agree with your analysis. I just think there are other dimensions too, and there's the one people typically forget. So by analogy, what you have in the mining space is this constant, if a miner doesn't want to do X, they will earn less money than a miner that does want to do X. Therefore, a miner will never do X or will always do X, right? So, and then you bring it into real world context where miners do economically irrational things all the time from the perspective of sats, but they do it because, that makes sense for power consumption, and that makes sense for using Bitmain, it's or just government pressure and regulatory moats and all those kinds of things. And the minute you start talking about that, everyone is economically irrational all the time. So, I mean, half the network's running bit axes at this point. Like, there's nothing less economically rational than running a bit axe, because you're never going to mine anything like the sats you could have bought. But so the thing with ARC as well is when you have this unilateral exit, that's maybe not unilateral, but you can assume that the guy is never going to do anything that puts you in a position where you wouldn't be able to pull the trigger, implies that they never get themselves into hot water as an ARC service provider, if that makes sense. Because they can, right? They can do things where everyone's kind of screwed. No one is unilaterally exiting from an ARC or a VTXO, I think they're called, because it's going to be too expensive for them to do so. And they've been put in that position by just someone that was running one of the ASPs that shouldn't, according to game theory, have ever gotten all of them in that situation, but did because they came under pressure to do so. And it's easier for users to just cooperate with them than it is for them to assert their rights. And I don't understand ARC super well. Or like my understanding of it is really noobish, actually. But I just see don't fall into that trap of, if you just take the system in isolation, it's watertight. Because there can also be a situation where your Lightning channels all get force closed in old states or whatever. And, why would anyone ever do something like that? Well, because the person that you have a Lightning channel with is in the United States of America, and there's a really stupid law in the United States of America right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, just from the game theory of Lightning itself, no one would ever try and trigger a justice transaction because it doesn't make any sense. It's just guaranteed loss of money for probably both of you. Well, in some cases, both of you, but usually just the person doing the attempting to close the channel in a fraudulent state. But of course, these things can happen all the time once you take the real world into context. But none of the LSPs are really on the radar yet. But then the minute they're like the level of Bitfinex or one of these giant exchanges or a pool like Foundry, once they have that level of notoriety, then they start to come under pressure to do all sorts of illogical things. Are you following me, or like someone opened a channel with Bitfinex?
I'm completely following you, but I'm curious what the like. I agree with your thinking about it, but what are you saying? How it relates to the idea of like everybody holding their own keys specifically?
Well, because we want to use these scaling solutions that allow shared UTXOs, essentially, right? Where you have someone that's, I mean, let's just lay it out for my benefit and for the benefit of anyone listening. What is ARC? Explain the concept of UTXO sharing and unilateral exit. Let's just go like high level with it, and I'll see if any of the holes I'm picking actually make sense.
Okay. It's actually just a little bit like a big giant joint lightning channel with a bunch of people. Like, I mean, not like when you get down into the nit and gritty, there's a lot of difference, but it's basically everybody has a transaction that is signed with their coins to exit, but nobody takes it to chain, and you can just update, close. You can close that UTXO and open up a new one. And all you have to do is you sign with the person that you're transacting with, and the ASP signs to update it as well. And what happens is the ASP is just constantly putting liquidity, like guaranteeing the payment with coins. They almost work like clearing banks in the sense that they're just making sure that there's always coins behind the transaction. And it's their obligation to make sure that nobody tries to screw the service provider with old state transactions rather than the users trying to screw each other. So basically the service provider takes on all the risk of the lightning channel on behalf of the users, and they charge like a standard fee for making transactions and fulfilling lightning payments, routing through them, because it'll be plugged into lightning immediately as well. So it's very similar to lightning channels in that you've signed a transaction that could go to chain, and then you can update it. And the ARC service provider is the one that's saying that, don't worry, if somebody else tries to publish an old state, I'm the one that's going to be enforcing it. And if I go offline, doesn't matter. People are only going to screw me, and you can still exit with your latest state.
Understood. Explain a little bit more about the mechanism for how, if the ASP, and I'm assuming this is all covenants style ARC rather than the covenantless ARC that someone came up with.
It basically still works with the covenantless. It's just not as, I think it just takes more on-chain space to publish it all because of the connectors. And Super Testnet used those in one of the things, but it's basically a trick to kind of like pseudo make a covenant, even though it's not quite. I don't remember. I did a deep dive and tried to wrap my head around it one day, but it's been so long I forgot. I wouldn't be able to explain it right now.
So if you trigger your unilateral exit, that's a fail state, right? That assumes that your ASP has gone malicious.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so is there any reason me as a participant in this, as a user, would elect to work cooperatively with my ASP as opposed to treating them as malicious, even if they're not?
It's cheaper.
So is that not the problem? Because the covenant,
it's not cheaper if something's gone wrong, because you don't have the option.
It's your only option if something goes wrong, but not necessarily.
It's like an insurance contract.
Yeah, I understand that, but the issue here then, doesn't it become the ASP can do something I don't like, where I can still continue participating, but they're now, all right, let's say they want KYC. Suddenly they want KYC, and I don't want to do that. And I can do my unilateral exit, but it's more expensive than what it is I can do if I just stay within this arc, I guess. And they know that, and they know I'm not about to. They know it's now a trade-off between me doing KYC or paying $80 to get my freaking UTXO back into my control.
Yes. Okay, I get what you're saying. But then all we're talking about is the cost to exit, is what's the relative cost to exit. If people don't care about KYC that much, then yeah, they won't pay the $80 or $100 or whatever to exit because it's not worth it to them. But in the context of what you're exiting from, like this is like would it be worth $80 for you to be able to exit your entire retirement from being used as collateral for the fiat implosion? Yeah, it totally is. And that's like a world shattering, like people being able to escape from like a massive debt bubble that everyone is like systemically trapped in a normal situation. So it certainly does mean that you have to value whatever the evil thing, the bad or the negative thing that they're trying to force on you or get you to do. You have to care more about exiting from that than the cost to exit. But lowering the cost of monetary exit down to $100 or $80 is something that right now Jeff is dealing with by trying to get to Antigua, and it's buy a $300,000 house and get property and fight for 3 years to get an H-1B visa. Like it's that level of solution that now only costs like $80 to $100. Maybe KYC isn't the thing to actually push you over the edge and you just send them your ID, but it's so fundamentally separate from the cost of exit when you're talking about the fiat system that I still think it's like completely night and day. But it absolutely you still have to make that trade-off.
Yeah, I don't think I appreciate your clarification there. I don't want to be like armchair philosophizing about it and, what about this? What about that? On the other hand, I think there's probably something. I think there's something.
That's in the description of the Roundtable. Like that's how.
Well, let's talk about
Bitcoin OG philosophizers.
I got arms. I got arms on my chair.
In practical sense, I think that there is something there that in the ARC world, if everyone's using ARCs all the time, yeah, obviously your example, I'm not, but by the same token as what you just said, I'm not going to have my whole retirement fund inside an ARC. I'm just going to have it in an actual UTXO because it's big enough to justify it. But I do think you'll probably have the ARCs with the good UX and the smooth everything and everything you want in the ARC, the reliable ones, the ones that don't keep screwing up, where you end up having to, because it's not maliciousness, it's just reliability sometimes that caused you in the past to have to unilaterally exit from an ARC and spend more than you wanted to. And actually, just like with Lightning, there could be the case that I used Lightning because I wanted to save money with on-chain transaction fees. I ended up on net losing a lot more just because of how much screwing around I had to do. Like I started with this Lightning, I had a channel, the counterparty kept going down all the time, all the payments were failing, so I closed it. And he was offline, so I had to force close it, and then I had to child pays for parent, the closure, and all these annoying things where you're like, okay, well, I've spent $40 on transaction fees now, and I didn't end up saving anything. So I'm just saying that experience in ARC land means I want to use the most reliable, reputable ARC guy around. And that guy has this app, which does, unfortunately, ask for a date of birth or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Just like, we're talking about pragmatic levels here. The ARC people that we're going to use is way better than having a bank account with Goldman Sachs or something like that. I get it. But
it will all be normalized.
Right.
It will all be normalized. And when it's normalized, it will come with all the normie shit. I completely accept or understand that. But I think it's really about the edge. It's about the 10% that do care and the 10% who need it. And importantly, not only lowering the cost of exit for that 10%.
Dude, how many people in Iran just lost their entire bank balances? Like they had 2 or 3 of their major banks were just wiped out.
Right. Yeah.
Wait, what happened to Iranian
2 or
banks?
3 of their major banks were just hacked and everything's wiped out. They have no like the records are gone.
Oh man.
A generation that you don't have to teach. Hold your own keys to. Like it will come with pain.
Yeah,
it will come with pain.
I really celebrate that point you made like 10 minutes ago. It is utterly true. Like people have to learn that way, but I don't think it passes from generation to generation, like you were implying before you made that point. That's all. Where if your parents got burnt, that you understand the folly of fiat and third-party custody and all that stuff.
No, I wasn't trying. I still think the generational cycles will happen of strong men create good times create weak men, weak men create bad times. Yeah. And that will happen with, I'll just put it in Mount Gox. And, I think we will relearn the hold your own keys over and over and over again.
They will.
This.
We won't.
They will. Yeah. We already did that.
That's the problem. It's
I get
never
old and demented and be like, I've just put my sheet phrase into the email. I don't.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of, what's that mean with the baseball bat? You will learn, like behind someone's head. I don't know what that's.
Do I not know that meme?
It's an old.
I don't know that one.
Like it's like someone with their back to someone else.
Yeah. Mechanic was like OG meme knowledge.
Yes, I am a historian.
I don't think I know that one. You're gonna have to find that one and post it in the group.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Do you guys want to hit news items?
Yeah,
we should do that.
Should we do that? I don't even know. Okay, so actually in the context of like we brought up Taproot and soft forks and, Steve mentions like we shouldn't, everything's like, these are about complex systems. Well, I just and I have not done a deep dive yet, but I just thought it was completely interesting that it says not ECDSA, not Schnorr, meet Dalias. It is a signature aggregation scheme that doesn't use Taproot. And it works with SecP 256K1, so like our current, like on chain, and it lets us do aggregate signatures that work right now and no soft fork. So
how the fuck did this happen?
I don't know. Some clever like autistic person apparently has figured this out, but everything that essentially the Schnorr signature and the Taproot thing was sold on, like the big thing that Taproot still hasn't even delivered, may not have even been needed. So I just thought that was fun.
We have currently already thought of all ideas possible. Therefore, we have to rush soft forks because there's no creativity left in the world. Nobody will think of anything new. So we got to change the consensus now.
Yes, we do. We need to add more features.
I agree with Steve. I'm glad we're all on the same page. Let's move on to the next item.
Address types need to have 8 preceding characters telling you what soft fork they pertain to. Like Satoshi era, addresses beginning with a 1 was too easy. It now has to be 4 characters that can be BC1P or BC1Q, depending on what version of SegWit they are. We need to make this more complicated. And the mantra needs to, the mantra very much is if it ain't broke, it doesn't have enough features yet, and we need to aggressively pursue along these lines.
I love that.
I love the best. All right. Well, that was very easy. We're all on the same page. We should do more soft forks. So, Briber Brother. This is an alternative mempool for miners to find non-standard transactions. So, it would seem that and this is actually in line because there was another item about Citria going to testnet. And I'm curious, Mechanic, actually, your thoughts on this, because I did an episode on BitVM and the idea of, because I still do think that there's a really interesting kind of holy grail of like, how do you make a side chain that can actually be guaranteed with the Bitcoin on chain? And BitVM, I tell you, like, I cannot hate the way they describe it more, because they just keep saying this will allow us to do DeFi. This makes it so that DeFi is possible and smart contracts are possible on Bitcoin. And I'm just like, I have never seen DeFi do anything other than trade a bunch of shitcoins. Like, I don't know what I've come to the point where I don't understand what people mean by quote unquote DeFi, because
centralized finance typically.
Don't they mean trade a bunch of
centralized finance?
Like, so I'll give you an example of why I don't get the whole idea of like trying to build like a pseudo like smart contract external market. Because when we talk about, I just read a piece by Alan Farrington on stable coins and eCash and all of these things, but specifically about Taproot assets and how with basically after a bootstrapping phase, you'll be able to pay in any currency and receive in any currency with Lightning as the payment rails.
Yeah.
That is actual DeFi. Like that's essentially a live Forex market that occurs directly in the transaction between buyer and seller. And they don't even have to know what it is the other person is trading on the other end. You're just agreeing on the price difference. You're finding, like, what else do you need? That's what I don't understand, is that actually makes Forex something that doesn't need a platform or some like central database of exchange between currencies, because all you have to do is say how many sats is this worth, and then you make the trade and it occurs at the moment of payment.
It's amazing, but I completely agree, but where's the oracle for how many sats one USDT is worth? I don't know how this part of Taproot
That's the thing,
works.
is it's any. Like you're just deciding. So there will be, necessarily exchanges, or you're just, you could have an oracle, but you could also just say, it's like, well, this is what it is in my area. Like,
the point is you agree whatever it decided before you press the button. Yeah.
Yeah. You just agree before
There's
you press
only
the
one oracle.
button.
There's only one oracle. If all this used UTX Oracle and it was doing it natively inside nodes, that would just be stunning.
Get our RPC get price, man. It's gonna come. I'm gonna put in a pull request.
He did. That was what we talked about in the episode.
Did you open that in a core?
Luke actually kind of jokingly asked me to open it. It's gonna be a while though.
Dude, you should add that to Knots, actually. Knots,
yeah.
We're going to feature max Knots to get as many people running it as possible, because all core seem to want to do is remove everything from it. Like, they want to get rid of the wallet, which is crazy. And obviously there's no mining stuff in it. You can't mine Bitcoin with your Bitcoin node. What a ridiculous thing. Only Satoshi would have such a thing. Like,
wait, they want to get rid of the wallet?
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, what?
Yeah.
Well, they've been pushing for that for ages. It's broken. No one really uses it apart from, I don't know. But no, who here uses Bitcoin Core as their freaking wallet?
I actually still have one. I
don't
do anything with it, but I still have one.
I have one too that I forgot. I forgot the password for the wallet.dat for something.
Oh, Jesus.
Hey, but before we get too far away from that, the feature thing on Knots, I'm a big fan of that. So when I looked into Knots, I found they had a lot more RPC requests than Bitcoin Core does, and a lot of the stuff I do is looking at ages of UTXO spent, and Knots has better RPC requests for UTXO ages than Core does. So aside from the spam stuff,
that's cool.
Yeah, more RPC requests. Not that there's a lot of people like me, but yeah, I really like that about Knots.
Yeah, it's definitely got more features.
Bitcoin Knots, great for blockchain archaeologists.
Yes, it's a superset of Core.
All one of us.
There shouldn't be anything that Core does.
You
that
should
Knots
start a university.
I love this stuff, man. I just freaking love it.
What were you talking about a minute ago, Guy? Because we got sidetracked.
Oh, Citria. So BitVM is essentially a way to, and their second version of it is that, and the way BitVM works is actually, I'm pretty sure it's like with the witness data. It's a little bit kind of like inscriptions, actually, in the fact that it like basically builds this like trick of a hardware circuit almost in the script, so that you can actually execute the whole code. Like, it's basically like a tiny program that's built into the witness data. But what it allows with BitVM 2 is that you can basically run a quote unquote full node for this sidechain. And if any of the operators ever try to cheat, anybody can actually look at it and then publish a whole bunch of stuff to chain. It's like a challenge transaction thing that takes like this series of stuff, but you can basically force the hand. It's a little bit like you can take it to court with the ARC, except that rather than just having your UTXO, you're calling bluff on like the whole thing, and you can publish a whole bunch of stuff that says the sidechain is being dishonest, and you can enforce the supply and the real ownership of everybody, because the program is literally actually in the script, like in the witness data somehow. Basically, yes, with a bunch of caveats.
if I understand it right, they figured out a way to make a NAND gate, right, from which you can make all other logic gates. And so it's now a full functioning, super inefficient way of doing stuff, but it can be done, right?
Yeah. So the supposed, you take out all the stupid, we're going to build DeFi and stuff, because I still don't get, I don't see why that's something that, it just screams shitcoins to me. But there's got to be something useful. And the idea of being able to force a sidechain or a separate network to adhere to the 21 million and ownership rules of actual Bitcoin, isn't that just like on its face something that would be desirable in being able to build any and all construction? If there is something, I mean, there's got to be something useful there in the context of like, there is no limit to human innovation. Shouldn't there be something on the other side of that that's worthwhile?
I don't know, because it is finance at the end of the day, and finance is just a great big jerk off, in my opinion, and I hate it entering the space generally. Like the sort of lending products that make any kind of real sense that are tied to reality in any way in this space typically require you to over collateralize everything to the point where everyone has the money that's needed in the fail cases anyway. So something goes wrong, you can only get your money back because the person on the other side of the exchange had more than the amount of money required to be able to make sure that would be possible. So like typically, like all the lending, like money lending is giving money to people that don't have it. It's not giving money to people that have 3 times that amount of money that just want to borrow something for some reason. I mean, I know there's uses for that too, but it's kind of sustaining this debt-based mentality that is just so unattractive that we're trying to get away from. And
there's an interesting thing just about finance in general is that, like, I think it's so hard to know what finance is actually going to look like because it's so bloated and so much of it is garbage today. It's so divorced from the reality that finance is actually supposed to refer to. And it's become this thing for the sake of itself, like finance for the sake of finance. And people in finance don't even realize that something matters underneath it. Like, it's not everything. Numbers aren't just supposed to always go up. Like, it's supposed to have something of consequence that occurs in the real world. And now it just has nothing to do with that. So the building those things out right now, I think would be 99% like just bullshit, because we don't know what finance ought to actually look like under sound money.
Cake wallet or something like this. Like the only shitcoin wallet I've used because, I had like some need for it was like Cake wallet, because I had to move some, I don't know, Tether on Ethereum and some other stuff. And I understand if you like, especially from like a privacy standpoint or something like that, if you want to be able to swap between, I mean, I think there are probably better ways to do things, and there probably will be more and more better ways to do things. But if you could do some sort of swap between a Taproot asset that was Monero, or, like if you can move in and out of something that is automated and not being recorded on somebody else's server, I don't know if you call that DeFi. Like there's DeFi benefits to having something like that. But I don't like, that's the only real world scenario I can think of, is that, it's just being able to move money that is kind of washing your footprints away.
Yeah, there's an interesting context, especially from like, what's the Tor network of Bitcoin, right?
Right.
And like, could you build something like that to basically, like, as many problems as the Tor network has, as much as like privacy is lost sometimes because of simple things that people get wrong, or you're talking about like nephew in Iran who had to try like 100 different Tor exit nodes to actually get out of Iran and get back connect to the internet. Like, that's still immensely useful when it is needed. So there's definitely a bit of an argument to be made there, is that, can you get that? Like, eCash is great from a privacy standpoint, but it's not good. It has tons of trade-offs from a trust standpoint. So is there a way to basically attempt to create that kind of like Tor network where maybe it's clunky, maybe it's a pain to get out, and you have to publish 12 transactions to actually exit properly, just like checking 100 Tor nodes, but that we could still have a Tor network of Bitcoin, of the Bitcoin protocol kind of thing, and a tool like that could be useful.
I could be wrong, but my guess is that liquid to lightning bridge is pretty useful in that regard. But like right now, but I could see how, there's probably better tools that could be built if you can,
Yeah, but that's federated without having unilateral exit. So it's federated trust, but not unilateral exit.
Right. But if you can exit over lightning, then you're now sending lightning has decent privacy characteristics anyway. And if you're exiting liquid into the lightning network,
I'm meaning in the context of like an Iranian government crackdown, is your bridge up?
Oh, sure.
Is your bridge available? But yes, in the context of privacy, while things are working perfectly well, in fact, that actually comes into our next news item like super great, because Super Testnet has been really entertaining on Nostr, because he's been arguing with a bunch of Monero people on like Lightning versus Monero privacy,
and Twitter too. He's been great,
and Twitter, yeah. He's been very busy, and it was really funny because he sent a transaction to somebody over Lightning. He did like a test thing or whatnot, or a bet. Said, okay, you send me a Monero transaction, I'll send you a Lightning transaction, and you tell me where mine's from, and I'll tell you where yours from. And he actually correctly identified what the address or balance or whatever was on Monero that he was paid from, and the other guy said it was from this one. He's like, nope, that wasn't mine. That was it bounced through it or whatever, and you were correct that was in the payment path, but that was not mine. So the other guy couldn't figure it out. But at the exact same time, he's built this what was it called? Lightning blinder, and it actually tricks an LSP. So like right now you don't have privacy from your LSP because you're having to pay through them with everything. But it actually tricks the LSP into thinking that one wallet, like a different wallet, is the one sending it, or the recipient, but it's actually some other wallet. It's like some way to like tie something together to literally trick the LSP so that you can actually get privacy over. It's a little bit like, I don't know exactly how the trick works, but it's a little bit kind of like trampoline payments in that sense, is that you can give the appearance of one destination and it's actually somewhere else. So he's made some really cool, as he always does. He's just like this autistic, build another cool shit and then move on to the next project kind of guy.
Yeah, he's great. His name is so reflective of who he is. I love it.
Super Testnet. He never leaves Testnet, but he is the superest of Testnets.
He's also been helping out in the spam thing. He suddenly was like he was all about knots for a bit and was like, no, I get this.
He's the one that I've been keeping track of, like what the percent is. He's been posting about it.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, he seems to have genuinely independent thoughts. There's so many people that you can just see they've just fallen into a camp. But
Super Testnet is totally Super Testnet.
I
love him because like whatever comes, I have no idea. I cannot predict what he is going to say about a thing.
Me neither.
He just that is his opinion.
Well, yeah, same with Luke, man. Every time I post something our internal, I've never met anyone like Luke who I'm like, he might love this idea, or it might be completely the worst thing he's ever heard of, and I never can guess.
He might make me feel retarded for the next 2 hours.
Yeah, I
can't believe you've done this,
dude. I can't get it. I just posted something in our internal chat that I was like, he's gonna vomit emoji this, and he put a love heart on it. I'm like, okay, all right. Did not expect that. Just
it probably depends on the day of the week.
Yeah, what mood's he in?
It's not reliable enough where I can just do the opposite of whatever my hunch is, because it's not consistent enough.
It's true randomness.
Yes. I could generate my private keys from Luke's responses to my ideas.
All right, this one's a heart, this one's a vomit. All right, this one's 2 vomits. Oh, damn it.
I think there is something to your ability to just generate randomness and your intelligence. Most people cannot generate anything random at all.
I don't think anyone could.
Well, I mean, there's no like real definition of randomness, but some kind of ways you can categorize it.
Wait, randomness is just the absence of a pattern, and that would be like proving zero, right? Or proving a negative. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, let's just say like ask somebody to do like a sequence of 30 numbers, and then you could run something like Shannon entropy metric on like how random those numbers were. Just something simple like that.
It's only an aggregate that you can even like.
Yeah.
It's a hindsight test, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to prove something wasn't random.
Yeah.
All right. This one's really cool because, man, I have slowly gotten more and more fascinated, and I've only used it like once, but I think there's going to be like this threshold because Nostr, and I really think Nostr is going to be kind of the key in this, is that as it's easy to send someone nuts or whatever, is Cashew is going to become more and more popular. Thank you. Cashew. But one of the things that I think, and I've tried to dig into how this works, and I think this actually works. I think this model would actually work, and it would be fascinating to see, because one of the big conceptual problems, so to speak, with Cashew is that you can just issue. You can just rehypothecate. You can just like issue as much as you want and not actually have the Bitcoin, right? You can just take people's Bitcoin and then go spend it somewhere. But granted, this was done with a perplexity, like rabbit hole of like 10 different things and like trying to wrap, because I still don't have like the best grasp of eCash, but it seems like it's all signed ahead of time from like literally a Merkle root that could be published. And if the total amount was published, you could always prove that your amount is part of that total amount, which means that it seems perfectly like doable that I could take a full Bitcoin and issue 100 million eCash tokens, quote unquote, against that Bitcoin, publish the Merkle root in that Bitcoin timestamp and in the timestamp or whatever of that Bitcoin or the op return or whatever of that Bitcoin transaction, and time lock that one Bitcoin for a year. And then if you ever received Guy Cash, you could check your hash against the root and prove that your 100 sats is part of that one Bitcoin, and that I have only issued one Bitcoin's 100 million units worth of eCash, and that I can't touch it for a year. And until it expired, that would be a total proof of reserves that I couldn't even do anything about. And everybody could use that eCash token, fully knowing that it's backed by real Bitcoin.
I like that.
The news item was that BTC Nut server is that BTC Pay server has a Cashew plugin now, so that you can do nuts. You can trade nuts on BTC Pay server, and you can accept. It's the stupidest thing in the whole world. The naming conventions of developers and cyberpunks are the worst.
No,
in the whole
it's the
world.
Worst and the best.
It's the worst.
This is the first one I've liked. This is great.
BTC Nut server.
It's great.
Jesus Christ. Multi-nuts.
I always didn't like the BTC Pay server name because you have to say the whole thing and there's no way to abbreviate it.
BPS.
Yeah.
BPS.
I can't even remember the name of BTC Pay server when I want to, because that name's so it's just like, I know it's really long, I just can't remember it.
It's the worst. I'm not an eCash enjoyer. I prefer the Fedimint thing somehow. I'm not really super well versed in either, but Jeff Booth sent me $1 on Fedimint, and so now I'm a Fedimint maxi and an eCash to the grave. I will take it to the grave. My
Wait,
hatred
Fedimint
of
is eCash though. It's just not Cashew. This is a different protocol.
Yeah, but it's a federated version, I guess.
Federated is better than centralized.
Yeah, it's presumably better, right?
Yeah, presumably. Yeah.
Yes, presumably. Let's not dig into whether it actually is or not, but
let's not think about it too hard. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay, Breeze and Spark are teaming up. Dude, I've been really like keeping a close eye on like all the Breeze stuff because they have been slowly plugging into like a bunch of different people and a bunch of different services. And the one thing that gets me, that still frustrates me, I've done a number of different transactions. Like a good example is actually Fountain. So if I'm like doing from Fountain to like Misty Breeze or Phoenix Wallet or something, a Lightning Wallet, is that both of those things need to be open at the same time to fulfill the payment. And there is that if anything goes into the background, like it's not going to let you sign. But like that's the one thing that drives me crazy, and I'm trying to figure out like, okay, how do you solve that in a non-custodial way? But from the context of like, I have my wallet open and it works, like Breeze works, and being able to plug that in like just straight into, I guess, with a simple SDK into the back end of a wallet. And then like all of these services that are providing like wallets and all of this stuff that you could set up your own LSP, they're making like plugging in an LSP like super easy, and they're trying to onboard people to LSPs. It's a really, really fascinating model. And Roy in particular has kind of had his finger on the pulse of Lightning for a really, really long time. So it's hard not to pay attention to what they're doing. And as the medium of exchange phase starts to kick off, they might have like just a really fascinating set of tools that just make it easy for developers to do Lightning without a whole bunch of liability. And that's like what I think the big thing is you're separating the payments from the app. So like I could add Lightning to my app and I don't have to be like, oh no, what do I do with the keys? And what do I do with, oh my God, how do I have to make sure that like there's always uptime on the Lightning node and all this stuff? It's like, well, no, I could give them a non-custodial tool and it plugs into the LSP, and they just, whatever the LSP or whatever is handling all of the difficulty, like Lightning as a service, literally, but non-custodial. Just, I don't know, really, really cool to continue to see developments on that. I'm just curious what y'all think about the whole model and where things have been going.
I mean, I like it. I don't know. I've been very slack on using wallets lately. When Breeze had some sort of update at some point that just kind of caused me some issues, and they were going to make some sort of big change, and so I cleaned out my channels and haven't played with it since. And then this is kind of the same thing with BitKit, and I've been meaning to go back to both. And I know you were just talking about PubKey on the episode the other day. So like, I don't know. I'm very much like still in the back of my mind though, if I'm gonna run any sort of like business or anything, like if I can connect to an LSP and also have my own Lightning channels, like I don't want to be an LSP for my customers, but if I can, you know, have the non-custodial relationship with somebody that can be the actual server that's always up, and then I can also have some sovereignty and route through them or something like that. That's just sounds like the best thing ever, right? Like it's super exciting because I don't have to do the major heavy lifting, but I'm also able to.
You're not limited at the same time. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. How much do you guys, Mechanic and Steve, how much do y'all even use Lightning day to day? I feel like I'm probably the only one here that
I don't use it day to day. I use it a lot though, and when I do, I have an LND node and I have a CLN node. It's my second time like running a serious CLN node. I use CL Boss to give me like a really good node. It runs on Start OS, which means I don't have port IP yet, which means connecting to it is a pain from remote, which is why I also have an LND node, which, via Lightning Terminal, I can actually connect to that. But that one is completely spent. I have like 3 channels with Bitfinex with 99.9% liquidity on their side because I've just completely spent them. So now I'm just an annoying insect from Bitfinex's perspective, because all they have to do is, if I close the channel in any prior state, I'm just stealing money from them. And that's the only thing I can do with this channel that has entirely inbound liquidity now. So I have nothing left to spend. I recently just got like a fun setup. So I like got this whole Proxmox cluster together, and then set up a NOTS node and then an ElectRS server on top of it. But because it's not StarOS and it's just straight up my Proxmox cluster, it's got like IPs and ports for everything. And I have a Ubiquiti router. So I can, VPN into my home network really easily with that, using the tools they offer. And that means, so now I just have an Electrum wallet on my phone, if you can believe it. I'm using Electrum, and that just connects to my Electrum server at home. So I straight up have like the legit on-chain experience. And I think it has Lightning in it, even the mobile wallet version of Electrum, though I don't really know how that's supposed to work.
Dude, does it really?
I don't know I know Electrum Desktop has Lightning somehow.
Because I know Electrum added Nostr Wallet Connect not too long ago.
That could be a thing,
which I thought was really cool. And that's how I've been using mine now. All the port stuff or whatever is I just use AlbiGo with Nostr Wallet Connect. That shit works pretty good, man.
Should have just built Electrum into Core a long time ago.
Well, they're not going to. They're going to remove the wallet altogether.
Yeah, I mean, but like, it's crazy that all the stuff you have to do. Who was talking about this? NVK was talking about this on a podcast yesterday. Like, the things people want out of a Bitcoin node. Like, if I was making a Bitcoin node, it would be a wallet like Electrum. It would be TX index equal 1, so you can just make all the transactions very searchable. Like heat maps, like mine. Like, when you look at your Bitcoin node, you should see transactions flowing visually. It shouldn't just be like a still thing there. Like, you should be able to click into the blockchain and zoom like Google Maps and like identify certain things. Like, that's what a node should be, in my opinion. Like, that's what people would want, I think.
That's the thing, is that it gets me about, we always talk about, like, Mechanic, you brought it up just a little while ago, is like, people aren't going to run nodes. Is that, like, if we're not designing the node to be useful to the people who would use it, then
exactly,
of course we wouldn't. But there are plenty of ways that I would use a node if it was easy to do so. Again, I'll tell you, if I could get and I intend to have some sort of a part in this if it just doesn't happen. It might take 5 years, but if nobody else does it, then I'm probably going to break down and fight with it for a really long time to get it to work. But I want a freaking device that's like a Start OS sort of thing. Like, and I wouldn't build the hardware. I'd just partner with somebody like Start, but that has like a little screen on it and a way to plug in, like, that. If I have an app, I could just bring up a QR code that says connect this app, and then I scan it, and then it connects to it, and I'm using that node for the things that I want to use it for, whether it's a mempool searcher, it's a UTX Oracle heat map, whether I'm using it as a UTX Oracle dollar price like source, or like just anything. Like, there's plenty of reasons why I would want to use a node, but it's not easy to do, and it's not being designed to be easy to do those things. Like, if utilizing it is a huge pain in the ass, then of course people won't, because it's like, why would I run it? Most people run it and then don't even plug wallets into it because it's too complicated.
So the pull request for the op return like blow up has been merged, and look at the last few comments on that PR with me and Chris Guida, and it just seems to be like we've gotten to this conclusion where it's like, do any of you use this actual software? Like, the people writing this stuff, why do these projects like Umbrella and Start9 exist? Why is it so unwieldy and impossible to use a Bitcoin node? Why do we have to build why has Start9 been around for 6 years trying to make a Bitcoin node usable? Like, that shouldn't be a thing. Like, why are they so difficult? Can we make these things user friendly? Can we stop? Why, like you say, the Electrum server, why can't I connect a wallet to a Bitcoin node? Why do I need it? Because they're saying, look, op returns can be pruned. And there was some annoying pedantry about whether they're talking about pruning it from the UTXO set or just pruning the block data, which is what pruning more generally means. And I'm saying, well, that's no small thing, because if you run any wallet and you want to connect it to your Bitcoin node, it's probably going to need an Electrum server. I know Sparrow can work directly to Bitcoin Core, but it doesn't want to, and it tells you not to do it that way. And that tells me you guys are not serious, because if someone wants to use a wallet and connect it to their node, which is basically the main reason you'd ever run a Bitcoin node in the first place, you basically can't prune it. You need to run you need to have all the archival data. So pretending that, just prune it, that's nothing, it doesn't matter, is annoying. That shows me that you guys aren't paying attention to the main reason anyone freaking runs a Bitcoin node. One reason, because I'm connecting my wallet to it, and that needs an Electrum server, which needs the node not to be pruned, because you can't prune. And then you have Lightning nodes as well, which can work with prune nodes, but generally don't. And it's a pain in the ass. If you want to prune your node, you're going to keep bumping into annoying things. It doesn't matter for datum, interestingly. Miners don't need archival data at all, interestingly, but wallet software does, and Lightning nodes do. So all this, like, just prune it, bro, it doesn't matter, tells me that the people that are pushing through these changes are not users of the software and are not paying attention to the implications for the people that might actually run it.
Like, I hear so many people talking about, like, oh, well, this needs to happen, or this needs to be fixed, or, again, I've had an argument or just conversation with people from kind of like this whole conversation about the whole Bitcoin Core drama stuff recently. And they say, well, people don't run nodes. It's like, but the node isn't designed to be useful to anybody.
Yeah.
Like, it's not being, of course they don't run it if you can't do anything. Like, I would love right now if I could download Bitcoin Core or Bitcoin Knots, and you gave me a piece of software where I had a link that I could just plug into I could just go into my ASIC and I could just paste it, and then it was using my node and running datum for a mining pool. And I paste in my node link, and then I paste in the pool link. If I could do that, and it was just that easy, I would be thrilled. Like, I literally I paid $1,000 for a node trying to make that happen. And it's still just frustrating. And I have multiple of these trying to get all of these different tools and stuff to work. Now, granted, Mechanic, I haven't like gone down the whole rabbit hole of getting datum to work on my Start OS, just because I haven't had the time to go back to it. My Albigo works right now, and I've got the address. Plugging into Ocean was super easy. But like, that's what I want in a node. And then the same thing with plugging my wallet into it. Like, those are the things that a node is useful for. Make sure that I am mining my own blocks as a miner, that I am checking my own transactions as somebody who holds Bitcoin, and
not giving away your metadata or whatever when you're searching for
and that if I'm looking up a history or something, that I'm checking my own node. I'm not giving that information to somebody else. Like, those three things are like to use the word, the core reasons a node should exist. Like, that's its purpose and what it would be useful for me to do. Why are those things not the easiest thing in the world? And okay, sure, give me the, like, why aren't you building it? Yeah, but everybody has, like, the developers who are building the nodes, shouldn't it be, like, I'm not demanding somebody else do it, but I'm asking, if you're complaining about people not running nodes and things being centralized, why is that not the focus?
Dude, I think we need to put all this in knots. We need this, like Luke's been talking about making Core Lightning.
I would freaking love it. I think
Core Lightning would just be in knots if it wasn't turning itself into a woke Rust project, because we're allergic to that. And then there's Electrum server as well, and other things that should just be a part of the Bitcoin software. And I think it's a fail. Like, because probably I didn't watch your podcast with Antoine. I haven't had a chance yet, but I watched this one with Stefan Lavara, and he definitely keeps making the argument that Core will lose market share if it doesn't do certain things, and they're invoking that a lot as a concern around if it doesn't relay certain types of spam, then people will abandon Bitcoin Core for software that does, which I find ridiculous because you can make knots relay as much spam as you want. And it's not like there's been any migration towards Libra Relay like there has towards knots. And this was, I'm going off on a tangent here, but
I was about to say, I do find it a little bit interesting that they did just lose a huge amount of market share for the opposite reason.
Right. I'm like, are you freaking serious with this argument? The only time 14% of the network abandon your software because you're attacking spam filters, and you're telling me that you're worried about losing market share for having spam filters and that they need to be removed. That was, I mean, did he make that point on your pod too? Because he definitely kept saying it on Stefan Lavara's.
Yeah.
There's also like for traders, like I get a lot of people asking me for APIs for my stuff, but just think about something simple like, what was the median transaction yesterday? Something simple, a simple question like that. What was the average transaction? What was the highest transaction yesterday? What was the lowest transaction today? Like, what was the highest transaction in Bitcoin history? Like, what, like these simple kind of things they are so hard to do. Like it takes me hours to figure out what was the median transaction yesterday, because the way the Bitcoin blockchain is stored is not really set up to index it like that. But it would not be a whole lot of extra overhead to add these options for different ways that you wanted to construct like indexable databases that could do searches like that. I just think maybe I'm the only person that would use it, but I just don't understand why traders wouldn't use this kind of information if it was there.
And I will say, I want to kind of steelman or caveat that like there is an argument to be made that like you don't want to do a whole bunch of unnecessary, like this is a layer on top, right? Is it like the connection to the service or whatever, if you're using like the BitTorrent network to make sure that you don't have to have port forwarding or whatever. Like there is certainly an argument to be made that like, well, the reference client shouldn't do that because like that's what the wallet provider does, and that's what the service is. Like somebody else needs to build that layer.
I don't know.
But that's the thing, is that like that's true for like 99 out of 100 things. But for mining, connecting a wallet and looking up stuff in my blockchain that I have downloaded, those seem core. Those scream to me, this is the purpose of a node. This is why I have a node. And
even if the UI isn't part of like Bitcoin Core or knots or whatever, you need to have it.
Just give me an API.
Yeah, I was about to say it needs to be built in such a way that these things can be called, and it makes perfect sense that you would want to be able to see or visualize data in a bunch of different ways. I mean, like it's now like price charts and stuff for stocks and whatever cryptos are like much more widely available now. But 10, 20 years ago, people were paying lots of money for like access to better data and better charts. Like these things are really, really valuable. If you can, I mean, your node has all of the data there. It's just not, like Steve was saying, it's hard to mine.
Yeah, it's hard to extract.
Yeah.
I know we're like hitting crazy on time here, but I wanted to get into Bitcoin treasury companies, because this has been, now there's like 21, there's, Metaplanet, GameStop, Strategy, like this has been suddenly like a huge thing of Bitcoin treasury companies. And they're also getting like a ton of flack from people who are like, this is ridiculous. Why would you give and I just posted this the other day. It's like, I don't quite understand the value proposition unless it's something like Strategy that's actually paying dividends. Like they actually pay out profit because they're a profitable company. But purely from the context of a treasury of like, you buy stock and we buy Bitcoin, and then you hold stock in a company that owns Bitcoin, as opposed to just buying Bitcoin. Like Like, is there any point where I'm supposed to be making more Bitcoin than if I had just bought it myself? And why should that be attractive to me as someone who wants to hold my own coins? I get it from the context of like people in Wall Street. There's a ton of people that might not be able to hold their own coins or have a retirement account, and it's locked. It's stuck somewhere.
Dude, it's a scam. And I've had enough pretending it isn't. It's basically someone saying, look, I know you like Bitcoin, and we have access to a bunch of financial infrastructure you don't have, and we will leverage that to buy way more Bitcoin than you ever could with what you have in an honest capacity, and we'll share the profits with you. The last part is the bit that's not actually going to happen, in my opinion. But the rest of it is, it's all kind of true. We know there's a bunch of financial games you can play in order to magic money out of thin air, the way Michael Saylor does. But Michael Saylor at least has a business with a product. These Bitcoin treasury companies most of the time don't. They're doing absolutely nothing except saying we're going to magic money out of thin air, which, okay, again, is possible on a fiat standard, and then use that to buy as much Bitcoin as possible. But the fact they're just going to siphon all of that extra wealth off for themselves in any way that they can. They just need gullible investors to go and buy this stuff. It is the scam of this cycle.
Yeah, you said kind of what I was going to say is that if it's a company that has it doing something meaningful, then it actually does make sense to, hey, I want to invest in this company because not only are they doing something meaningful, but they're going to last because they're using Bitcoin as their treasury reserve asset. And like this is now like, here's a potentially like long-term investment that, could be.
Well, they're going to put their profits into more Bitcoin. So like they're going to grow in value because they do things that add value.
Right. But if they're not a company that's doing something meaningful, then buy Bitcoin. Like,
The only thing that I can, like, from the context of like, oh, we can financialize a bunch of stuff, is that this is like the quote unquote value being provided is arbitrage. Is the only thing that they are doing is arbitraging the interest rate. That if you're a big enough, financialized enough company, is that you can get an interest rate that's below the CAGR, like whatever we expect Bitcoin to go up because of the, if they print 10% new money every year and you can get a 5% interest rate, well, then you're arbitraging that 5% difference because the interest rate is fake. The interest rate isn't real in fiat land. And so that this might actually work and continue to work as an arbitrage opportunity until there is enough liquidity that the fiat interest rate for large enough entities is real. And right now, it's fake for an indefinite amount of time until something is big enough to basically start to pull the rug out from underneath it.
Does that mean that the way that they're operating, like does that run? Do they run out of? Do they end up in like a weird situation at some point? Like companies that are trying to,
they just stop getting a gap. Like, and at some point it won't make sense to do anymore. And like I don't think it's they implode. I mean, at some point they deleverage, but like they're deleveraging in fiat and like the equity, the stock itself, if it's not,
should be worth way more.
Like if they don't have to give up their Bitcoin, then it shouldn't hugely matter. It just kills a premium, and then there's no reason for anybody to value it above any. In fact, it would be valued at a discount. So like it'd be like 95% the value of the Bitcoin because you don't hold it. And then basically the game would be up and they wouldn't be able to get favorable interest rates. But again, I don't know how long that takes.
Yeah, I haven't been paying super close attention, but from what I've seen, it looks like MicroStrategy moves almost like a derivative of Bitcoin. Like when Bitcoin's going up, MicroStrategy goes up a lot more. When Bitcoin's going down, MicroStrategy goes down a lot. Which is
classic crypto.
It does make it interesting, but
it does seem, I mean, again, it's a leveraged trade, it seems like.
It's just speculative attack, man. It's just like
it's a speculative attack. That's exactly right.
Some people that like, these sharks that are willing to do the speculative attack, and then you have these other people that kind of want to feel protected and get kind of the gains from like somebody else having the courage to do the speculative attack. I'm okay with it so long as like they actually have the coins. Like, I don't know if if Coinbase actually has all of the Bitcoins they say they do. If they do, then I don't think I have anything ethically wrong with it. As long as they're not saying they're doing stuff they're not doing, if they really are buying the coins with the money that they're getting from the, sell of these stock shares and stuff like that. Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they might get rugged, but I don't know.
I just think that there's just money that gets siphoned out of it by all the execs of these companies. They're just going to find a way to claw most of it for themselves.
Yeah.
Like, someone's going to pay for these guys to fly around and sponsor conferences, which are going to be like $100,000 a pop. And like,
yeah.
Well, in the context of the great taking, do you even own the stock? You're trading the actual ownership of Bitcoin for the ownership of a financial instrument. And what happens if the custodian for the equity that you bought through your JP Morgans and your whatever your clearing bank is, if they go under and we have a financial collapse? It seems to be in the great financial crisis, like JP Morgan clawed back a whole bunch of stuff from Bear Stearns or from Lehman Brothers. And there was a freaking lawsuit that they were like, no, that's Lehman Brothers. That's that's the equity that they sold to customers. Like, they sold it outright. Nobody owned that underneath like I bought that and I held that equity and that's owed to me. It's like, well, no, the clearing bank is too important. So they get to not give Lehman Brothers the collateral that they have to give out in bankruptcy because the clearing party is the quote unquote protected class. And this was held up in court that somebody who doesn't even own the equity, but is holding on behalf of another company that has outright sold it to a customer, doesn't get it to reimburse the customer in the context of in the event of a bankruptcy. The clearing party gets to just take it so that they don't have to handle the counterparty risk of settling Lehman Brothers transactions that go down. That's insane. And I don't see how this is not in that boat. Like, you're holding equity that if some too important bank starts to get squeezed, you don't own strategy equity. They still own the Bitcoin.
It's really going to come down to who holds the keys. It's going to be very interesting.
It's a crazy not your keys, not your coins on a like ridiculous level.
Yeah, and it just seems like such noise. Like, from the perspective of anyone that's like, from your average person that wants to become a Bitcoiner, the last thing you need to do is this kind of bullshit. Just buy some Bitcoin and stop messing around. You'll be keep it simple. You'll be so glad you did. It's another distraction like crypto. Like, there's money in crypto, but just forget about it. It's a waste of your time.
It's just the froth is always at the top. Always at the top. You always see the froth before you get to the drink, and like it just. This is just the current phase of it, and I think it's because we're entering the institutional and government. Like, one of the things that I tried to describe in a recent episode of how it is that Bitcoin scales, because gold scaled down, Bitcoin's scaling up in like value transactions. So it's like proving itself in each layer. Like, it proved itself in the most shallow layer first, right? Is that like, okay, it works for like buying weed online for $20, and it works for Satoshi dice and doing like a bajillion little transactions. But then it basically fills up that bucket and it says, okay, well, maybe we can do it for $100 transactions. Maybe we can do it for $1,000 transactions. And I can actually like save a little bit of money for the future. And like, so it opens up into a new layer and it starts to threaten the bucket underneath. And we keep moving up and we're trying to scale as fast as we can to prevent from clearing out that medium of exchange bucket. But I think when we kind of hit that threshold of like major institutions, governments are holding it, states are holding it, like large institutions are settling internationally, financial institutions are basically settling Forex, governments are settling energy. Like, once we enter that phase, which we haven't, like that bucket has barely been, like, there's like 2 drops in that bucket for the whole time that Bitcoin has been around. But when water just starts pouring into that bucket, everything else is going to get priced out. And I think it's going to be fees are the exact same for 20 years. And then suddenly too many people with too many really big freaking bags need to use this to settle for, large, like for really big transactions. And it's just going to wipe all the liquidity out of the smaller buckets.
It's going to be a hack when that happens. Not people just need to settle transactions. It's going to be like an exchange goes down and everyone freaks out.
Sure.
And that's how it's going to happen.
It's going to be Coinbase. Coinbase is good. Like Coinbase is the honeypot.
I hope it's not Coinbase. Let it be somebody smaller than Coinbase, just so that everybody questions Coinbase.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Well, that's kind of happened enough. I'm fine with it being Coinbase.
Oh God. It's going to be 2 years until we recover.
Oh my God!
Hey, we've done that before. That's
I'm okay with it.
No problem. Yeah. Don't be holding equity when that happens. Good God!
How much of the financialization of like big institutions using Bitcoin? How likely is that to move to Liquid? I mean, wasn't Liquid trying to kind of appeal to some of the financial sector with their privacy things and stuff? Because I mean, I don't know, if you're a big company and you're moving money, you don't want everybody to know how much you're sending where. So
yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
whatever happens is going to be interesting, but it would be interesting to see if maybe Bitcoin's transaction fees don't explode because we've already got enough second layers to kind of absorb things and make things. I mean, I do think that a hack could cause the transaction fees to explode.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Well,
there will be storms.
We're at like 2.5 hours. We should. There's like a couple other things we could cover, but I'll actually just hand this over to. Is there anything else you want to bring up or a last point you want to hit, and then tell people where to find you if you got something to push.
I mean, this thing that's been bothering me. Have you seen this X11 thing in Linux where there's like,
yo, so weird. I can't figure out if that's a conspiracy or if that's like.
Well, no, I'm basically.
I don't know anything about this.
That they're infiltrating open source projects that are important and pushing weird, stupid 1984 style agendas that don't really matter that much in order to weed out sycophants from people that just want to do a good job. And this is how you make all these institutions like Bitcoin Core and all that full of people that will just do what they're told.
So what's happening? What's happened in X11?
Tell me about that. Yeah, I'm confused. I don't know this.
Oh, there was like a video driver that it was a thing for ages. Some people from further back liked it, and it wasn't really being maintained, and none of the pull requests for it were being added. But all the repos like Ubuntu and Mint and all the mainstream Linux repos were like hostile to it for whatever reason. And then it got worse and worse. Someone forked the repo and then merged all of the things that should have been merged ages ago, and then all of the big distros went, all right, well, now we're kicking you all off in an unceremonial fashion. And it just became a ridiculous thing. And, now there's some like blue-haired Seattle person going around like removing anyone from organizations on these, if they conduct microaggressions or something that violate the code of conduct, particularly with relation to this issue. And there's just all this heavy-handed language, and like, I don't think the issue itself really is that much of a big deal. So it can kind of look.
I don't know, man. I'm very suspicious of this sort of behavior. Like, that's just maybe my nature, or I don't know. I've read a lot of things related to, I've read Gulag Archipelago and all, a lot of things related to like the politics and this sort of thing, and it's just a huge red flag to anybody that has anything to do with hate speech or like
microaggressions.
Yeah, microaggression. Any of these, like, we're just an alternative lifestyle kind of thing. Like, I feel like there's it's never honest. It's always an agenda for some other thing. Like it's never what it appears to be. That's just like the way I approach it. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just don't believe any of those people even believe half the shit that they're saying. I think it is almost always an effort to push some other fucking thing in the background, and they don't want to tell you about it. This is just the way they signal to the other shitty people that want to push this thing. Like, you know.
Yeah,
there's an element there of like so much of the core beliefs of a lot of those things are sell them as the way they sound rather than as they are. You know, it's like I'm lying to myself. And
that's
once
true.
once you're lying to yourself, it's really easy to think that, well, this is a framework that makes sense. And so everything else can just be the way it sounds good rather than what it actually is. And so I'll say we should do this because of this. I just want to admit to myself that this is actually the reason underneath it all, because this is the one that would be great for the commercial. You know what I mean? Like this is we're anti-hate speech or whatever, when really it's just like nobody ever should be able to say something that makes me uncomfortable. Like and they're unwilling to admit that to themselves. So of course they're unwilling to admit it when they're trying to control everybody else's speech, because the last thing they want to realize is that I'm willing to literally violently enforce that somebody else can't say something because I can't deal with it.
Well, and then if you point out some sort of like unforeseen cost to whatever that thing they're pushing, it's just like you've aggressed against them. So like they can't handle the truth in any context. So
I mean, this is woke stuff, but it's all the essence of the left is power. It trumps truth. I mean, or I think they would say that is kind of true anyway, but the left basically just wants to say that's all that matters. And this is why all they care about is oppression, because they're saying, all you guys, it doesn't matter what's true. If you can oppress us, if we are the victims of your oppression, then that is all that matters, and we must overcome that. And any dishonest tactics we engage in order to break the system oppressing us is a means to an end that you're only going to do too. And but I mean, I don't know, man. Like to me, it all started with Rust, with this programming language being pushed. That it has all this White House and DARPA propaganda telling devs that they shouldn't be allowed near memory, then that the using languages like C is dangerous to our democracy, and and. Like, they didn't.
You are plugged into a whole world that I don't even know exists, man.
Dude, I'll send you the links. There's a White House article.
I need this rabbit hole.
All right, so there's whitehouse.gov and a DARPA post saying developers need to stop using dangerous languages like C that give them control or direct access to control over memory management.
Oh my God. No, we have to do an episode on this and not mention spam once. Okay. But I want to do, because that will really trip up everybody who's listening to an episode with Bitcoin Mechanic in it. But we should 100% do that, and not even bring up that we're not talking about spam, just so everybody's like ultra confused. But I really need this rabbit hole. This is totally new to me.
I'm going to send you the links now and you can decide. But basically, my conclusion from it was, for whatever reason, they don't want devs to have exquisite control over a computer. They want them to they want to abstract it away with stuff like Rust, where you don't have control over it.
You were up to some shit. Dude. That is immediately
it's
what
DARPA.
My thoughts.
It's freaking DARPA. Do I need to say anymore? It's obviously something's going on there. And then every single one of these woke bluehead devs is always Rust. Every single time. That's the language they want to use everything in. That's what SV2 is written in. That's what I already am like, okay, let's not use Rust. I know nothing else about this situation. But if DARPA tells me it's dangerous to use something else, I'm not going to use that. I'm not going to use it. Yeah, it's the most vaccinated programming language that they've got. It literally will vaccinate you against seg faults, which is what, But I mean, this was when we released Datum, it was written in C, and Peter Todd, his reaction to it was written in C, ridiculous. They should use a safe programming language like Rust. So the fact that like narrative is out there and the people are now getting bashed for using C, and there's a stigma against it. When it was C was like the champion language for like 25
Still
years
is, man.
or something.
It still is.
Yeah, Python is written in C. Is like the point. It's the programming language because it's the only thing you can. Well, I don't know if it's the only thing, and I shouldn't get too out of my depth here, but it definitely is like the pro old school devs use C and then might tweak the assembly that the compiler costs out as well if they want to really write something efficient.
Well, how does that relate to C++? Because like Bitcoin was originally written in C++, right? Like what's the...
Yeah, the C++ is just a bunch of extra stuff in C. And it used to be pretty terrible, but I think it's gotten really good by this point. It's a very close cousin to it.
Or it makes sense that you would write something like that, like in as low a level as possible, because the last thing you would possibly want is for it to execute differently on a different machine.
Yeah, you need it. And also you need to be really efficient. If Bitcoin Core was written in Python, it would be a joke.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's just true. But I don't know. Yeah, I'll send you the articles. I pretty much need to jump off now anyway. So
yeah. All right, dude. Dude, thank you for joining us, man. I'll catch you later, man.
All right. See you all on the next one.
Yep.
Later, dude.
Bye.
Jeff, any last words? Anything you want to bring up?
No. I think I'm good.
No, I'm good.
I don't think, I got lots of flying to do. I need to
good luck with that. Let me know. I would love to try to be wherever, obviously, so just keep me up to date.
I'll send you the link to the Zoom meeting or whatever, but the wedding's coming up real soon, and then I'm going. I've got like 2 days between my flight back and then my flight to Antigua. So, and we'll see how things go there. I'm just gonna go see if it feels like somewhere I want to live, and if there's safe enough, like everything feels safe enough for me to buy a house in an area that I can feel comfortable with. It sounds like everything I've asked, I've got a Facebook friend that's there, and everything I've there are grocery stores all over the island. They deliver all over the island. It sounds like I was worried about maybe it would be hard to get a car on the island. There's a bunch of used car. I guess the used car market is kind of trapped on the you don't ship used cars out of Antigua, and so there's pretty cheap cars available. So I don't know. It looks very. I'm very hopeful, but it's a big change. So
yeah, for sure. Well, I will go down there and visit, but I won't help you unpack.
That's fine.
I'm not going to do that.
I'm not. The house I'm gonna the houses I'm looking at are fully furnished, and I'm just gonna take some suitcases. So it's not really gonna be.
I guess.
I'm just gonna buy more stuff. I guess fill up another house.
I think I'm going to start ending podcasts when people say do you have anything else or whatever before we sign off? I think I'm going to start ending every single one with start working on the 2106 bug now.
Bitcoin is dead in 2106.
So it's just first of all, this is something everyone agrees on is a problem. Everyone agrees it needs to be fixed. We have currently no path towards fixing it in the future. Everyone just wants to kick it down the road and think it'll be later. But what's going to happen when we kick it down the road is it's going to be harder to implement, because the more things you add into Bitcoin, the more things that are going to break with the 2106 thing happens. And also the more political it's going to come when people try to pork barrel in. They're going to say we have to hard fork anyway, so let's go ahead and add this stuff into it. It's not clear that it has to be a hard fork. The sooner we start doing this, if we wait till the last second, then yeah, it'll definitely be a hard fork. The longer we wait, the more chaos it'll create. And it's Why are we even talking about tail emissions? Why are we talking about anything that happens after 2106? We have no path past 2106 now. No one should be allowed to make any discussion about anything that happens in Bitcoin past 2106 when we have no path beyond 2106 right now.
It's basically hate speech.
If we all agree on this stuff, man. Let's do it. Let's show the time preference that we have, you know? Let's do the important shit. This is the important shit.
Which one is the 2106? Is that the timestamp one?
Yeah, the timestamp is in Bitcoin is 32 bits, and in 2106, that 32 bits becomes all ones.
It's the Y2K.
Cannot, like that thing you were talking about with like
Bitcoin.
You can spend this for like 1,000 years. I'm just like, how do you even code? There is no variable in Bitcoin which can accept a date beyond 2106. You can't put a timestamp beyond 2106.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is just flat dies on that date. So,
and everything that would be invalid becomes valid again because it's underneath its timestamp. Like it's
can't get another block.
Time lock requirement. Yeah,
it's impossible to have a block beyond that date.
Oh, I guess so, because the block would have to be before. Yeah. Like it literally isn't anything. It just.
Yeah, so it's not even clearly a fork because all nodes right now stop dead.
It's just a conclusion. It's
a conclusion.
I didn't even think about that. I thought thinking that it would probably be a fork or like a wraparound kind of thing, like Y2K. Is it like, oh well, it doesn't know what year it is, but like because you have to have a larger, like your height or whatever. It's kind of like, block height or whatever. So if you went back to 0 on Genesis block, you just couldn't reproduce it because you have to have a longer chain. Like we have to go to 20. We'd have to keep going to like 2212 or whatever to actually get a longer chain. But then it would just stop again.
So we need a version of Knots that fixes that bug, that comes with a like a data visualizer. Mm-hmm. And
just API, just indexing, indexing an API. That's all you need. All you need is like a indexer, and then like some sort of method to connect straight to it. Like I think that, like even if like Nostr or whatever, like I think it is meaningful to have some way to solve that problem, because one of the biggest barriers to the entirety of like internet centralization problems is the port forwarding problem. Is the fact that you can't have like a thing at home just on a normal internet connection that can host. Like, is that you immediately have to go into all this stuff, and you have to get a domain, and you have to like set, static IPs and like all of this crap. And like that is a huge barrier to, like, it's exactly why file sharing worked when you didn't have to do that. Like, but somehow we still just never made use of it. But we have tools. We have a thing here now, and Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer network. We should be thinking more about how to make it peer-to-peer accessible for the individual and for the node itself.
When pair drive.
When pair drive, just can't. I just can't. No, we're actually going to be testing the. Maybe today. I don't know. We're trying to get the first version of React Native.
Whoa, is it really almost 5? Whoa.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's late.
Shit.
We did this for a long time.
Yeah, I gotta go.
But okay. We'll update on Pair Drive. We'll have something meaningful, because we're trying to have it so that, like, at the peer-to-peer summit in July 17th, is I can demo, like a thing that you can see. So that's what we're going hard for, and that is when we will release kind of like the NPM package. It'll probably be private still, like in the sense that like it won't be like fully open source, so that you can see the code, because we still have to refactor the whole hypercore stuff. And I don't want to release it until that refactoring is done, because there's like a couple like really big, like annoying things that have to be solved. But I think we know how to solve them. And so we'll release it as you can't see the code yet. And then after that, that'll be the public, quote unquote, beta or alpha, whatever you want to call it, and invite people and build with it and all that good stuff. So
awesome.
Soon TM.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta run, guys. See y'all later.
Later, guys. And that wraps us up with Roundtable number 10. Had an awesome time with that one. Always good to catch up. Lots of stuff to cover. And there's actually quite a bit of other news items that we had in the list, but these were kind of the core. We actually hit most of the ones that I really wanted to talk about. And I think I'm actually going to save a lot of those other things. There's a really interesting software proposal that basically to fork out, it's not actually cutting it out. It's just creating a way to expire unspendable UTXOs, essentially to get rid of the UTXO bloat of the spam transactions. And it's actually a pretty clever proposal and doesn't actually like lock them up and make them totally unspendable. It's not really a confiscation scheme, even though it kind of sounds like it is. There's still a way to spend them. It's something that I think requires an episode to dig into. And I might even try to get Robin on the show or whatever so that he can break down the idea. But we're going to cover them more in depth. And I think some of them deserve their own shows like that. So we're actually just going to leave it. I'm not going to do like a fast bullet point of a bunch of things that I'm eventually just going to cover in depth. So with that, thank you guys so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe. Stay tuned. We'll have a Roundtable 11. We won't miss next month. We're going to do everything we can. It just gets busy sometimes. And don't forget to check out Bitcoin Mechanic. Don't forget to check out Ocean Mining. Don't forget to check out UTX Oracle and UTXO.live, which is the website that Simple Steve runs. He's got so many cool little things. I love to geek out with him on that stuff. And of course, Bitcoin Audible, stay tuned for Pair Drive. Things coming on the horizon very, very soon. And I will catch you guys on the next episode. And of course, the HRF and their Financial Freedom Report. If you want to have the resource of what's going on with financial repression around the world and the tools to save and protect you from that. And of course, their amazing development funds. If you are building, cypherpunk technology, if you're building tools for dissenters, definitely check them out. And lastly, PubKey is now an invite-only beta, and you just have to go to the website and request an invite and hit me up over there. I try to post up there pretty often, and I'm just endlessly fascinated by these really cool new ideas of how to fix the core problems of Web 2.0, where we have gone in the web. And, what would it look like if we actually use the tools today to solve those problems and we actually went back and could have a second chance at this? And I think PubKey is onto something really, really cool. So check it out. Links and details in the show notes, as well as my ID. And I will see you guys up there. And until next time, guys, this is Bitcoin Audible. I am Guy Swan, and that is my 2 cents.